Greetings.
Hello.
My greetings. Well met. Greetings, traveler.
Greetings, friend.
The pleasure is mine.
Hello and welcome to episode 250. Holy crap, 250 episodes of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Saturday, July 25th in the afternoon, right in the middle of Pokemon Go Fest for those of you celebrating. Joining you live from Gadgets New York, it's me, Ridiculous Hat. From Karazhan, California, we've got Bodikus.
Wow, 250. Oh,
Right?
That's a lot.
Yes.
That's a lot.
And embarrassing enough, I did not recognize this until our amazing guest pointed it out with his amazing show detection radar. But we'll get to that in a second. Also, from Undercity, Pennsylvania, and this is not our amazing guest, this is our third host, it's Edelweiss.
Hey, everyone.
And then, special guest, amazing guest, from Dragonblight, Lincolnshire. Did I say that right? Lincolnshire? It's Lorinda. Hello, Lorinda.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going all right. How are you? Thank you so much for taking the time on your Saturday evening and maneuvering time zones to hang out with us.
Yes, finally, fiance is just playing the Pokemon Go Fest downstairs right now, I think. In fact, I think it's over now, but yeah.
Okay.
She'll be doing all her trades and stuff now, so we're good.
So
I may or may not be currently catching Dratinis for my mom on the side right now.
And I may or may not have gotten yelled up on my wife because she wanted to raid with Bodikus and he had to do the stupid that's direct quote. I'm directly quoting. It's fine. It's no big deal.
I couldn't figure it out anyway. She was like, you have to leave when there's less than 5 people or whatever. I'm like, oh, well, there goes one of my mom's raid passes, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah, I don't claim to understand how it works either.
Yeah, me neither.
She might be the competitive one in this house, which is terrifying to think about. Anyways, Concede, also listener, is supported directly by you. Thank you so much for that. If you'd like to find out how you can support us, receive rewards in return, head to patreon.com/CoinConcede. You can also support us by leaving an iTunes review totally free and really helps other people find the show. Big thanks to the new patrons this week, Mix Clouds, Joshua B, and Eric S. You're awesome. Thank you so much for the support. But let's get right into our interview section here with Lorinda. Hi, Lorinda. How you doing?
Yeah, doing great. It's great to be on here after 250 episodes, like 5 years worth of stuff.
It's a long time, and of course we are not the founding host, but you have worked with one of the founding hosts, one Cora Songbird.
Indeed.
And we've gone through some host rotations, but yeah, 250 episodes, pretty amazing. But we're not here to talk about us. Well, we kind of are, but that's later in the second half of the show. In the first half of the show, we want to talk about you. So, for those who somehow don't know you, give us some background as to your role in the scene and how you got into Hearthstone. How did you find the game?
How did I find Hearthstone? So I was a Magic player for the longest time. I think my first set was 4th edition. For those of you who feel old, you don't anymore. Played a couple of Pro Tours, got kind of as good as I could get at the game, which was, the equivalent of, I don't know, Legend 10,000 or something. Just mediocre horribleness. And I was getting sick of it. Magic started changing a lot of stuff. They started cashing in a lot, in my opinion. And I wanted something fresh. And Hearthstone was there. My team hid it from me for 6 months. So I never got in on beta because they knew I'd leave. And then after one of the Grand Prix, I loaded it up and realised that I'd been lied to for 6 months. I should be playing Hearthstone. And then I instantly just made the switch that day, the first day I played Hearthstone.
Wow. So you were kind of, we all have a Magic the Gathering background, you were kind of a PTQ end boss sort of thing?
Yeah, let's go for that. I made it to 2 Pro Tours, but from the UK scene, so it's like sort of, I don't know, winning the tallest midget competition, I suppose.
There was a second there where like John Ormerod was doing really well back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there was a second.
Yeah, it was there when I got to my Pro Tour, in fact, so yeah.
With Blue Green Madness?
That team. Ormerod, so we played 99-2000 Chicago.
Oh, that was Urza's block.
Warren Marsh, John Ormerod, Tony Dobson, Paul Barclay, who was better known as a judge.
Oh, Paul Barclay, he made Full English Breakfast. One of my favorite decks ever. What a great deck. That was Survival of the Fittest. Oh, man. Okay, we're not a Magic podcast. We're not a Magic podcast. So, so you found your way to Hearthstone because it just was it was so fresh back then when it first came out. So, what's your favorite class?
Favorite class? I always struggle with this question, like favorite card, favorite class, because I seem to be a hater. I have things I don't like, but the things that I do like are much harder to come by. I guess I would have to go with Warlock because drawing cards is good. But
Okay.
having not played WoW, I'm a lot less like affiliated with any particular class, I think.
So then let's take the spin. Let's spin the question the other way. What don't you like about Priest?
What don't I like about Priest? Resurrecting things in general. I don't like my opponent to just be able to do the same thing over and over again. That's like more magic-y stuff again. I want to just put cards on the table and hit them with them and get hit with cards and hit them back and keep hitting until somebody goes to 0 and explodes.
So your favorite class is Demon Hunter?
Yes.
Okay.
That's actually just yes, I guess that's fair.
I mean, if you like hitting people until they die, this entire expansion has been about that. And every so often you crush a skull so you can crush your opponent's skull. Is there a particular deck that you can remember being just something you really resonated with?
I mean, Rosaka's Priest, I hate to say, so that's all my 3 fans gone, finally. Rosaka's Priest was just really interesting. When you take away the bits where sometimes you just win in 5 seconds flat and the game wasn't a game. But the games that actually progress into a game were super technical and super interesting.
Yeah, there have been some really, really high-level ones. Surrender won a game where his Raza got burned, if I recall, in an event a few years back. That was... I mean, watching Surrender play, of course, is just a wonderful experience, period. But there's a lot of skill to the deck, even if sometimes the skill is Raza on 5, Anduin on 8. Right, and that's going to happen.
Yeah, that is the downside of that. And the mirror match was super skillful, except that somebody would go 5-8, game over. But we saw, I was lucky enough to cast the Coach Twisted match, so we saw how you could play that deck badly.
Oh, man, that is a deep cut right there. That was against Wallawumpa, I think.
Yeah, who had played that game brilliantly, by the way. Forget all of the hype. He realised that his opponent was making a mistake, and he convinced him to keep making that mistake. He didn't play the deck anywhere near how you should play the deck, but he made the opponent... The mistake was the opponent kept pinging minions when he should be going face. So Wallawumpa just kept playing minions. He didn't care what he was doing. He wasn't playing how you should play. He was just like, I'm not going to wake my opponent up. It's God knows what time at night right now. My opponent's half asleep. He's obviously having a moment. I'm just going to keep playing minions until I've drawn the cards that catch me up. And he was a known... Magic keeps coming up. He was a known brilliant Magic player. And that was a very Magic thing to do. Just, I'm not going to play the deck. I'm going to play the player. And that got him the win. And you can look at his play and say how badly he played. No, he played great that game.
Reminds me of the Hunter Ace match against Viper, where he feigned the what was it, explosive trap, or feign, and it was misdirection or something. It was just like completely perfectly played. That was yeah. It's always good when you see a player think outside the box of what you should, or what is quote unquote the optimal line in your average game versus the optimal line against a specific player.
Yeah, and it's what separates the really good players from the truly great players as well, especially now that we've got a lot of really good players. People are having to find those extra little percentages here and there and start actually outplaying their opponents, not just playing their decks really well.
Who's blue?
I think that was Edelweiss.
Edelweiss.
But did you skip a question?
Oh, I did skip a question. We're very professional here at Coin Concede.
Yeah, we're very organized.
250 episodes.
What's going on?
250 episodes can't keep track of a list of bulleted questions. All right, I'm going to go ahead and strike these off. Lorinda's saying, "What have I done? What have I done?"
250 episodes. We got it. We're going good.
It's fine. It's fine. The only people that will ever hear this are the patrons and the people that are here right now in chat. Hi, Brian. So it sounds like you were hooked from Hearthstone from the very beginning, and even if there were some classes and some cards that maybe you didn't like as much, the game as a whole just was so compelling. And I agree, coming from Magic, I had that same feeling first picking it up. How did you transition from that approach of being the tournament grinder to the idea of being more of a caster, being more of a face of the game?
It was an accident. I don't even know. I was streaming to some people. I mean, 5, and 3 of those were leaving their Xbox on overnight, so that I'd have 3 more viewers and move up the rankings, so you could actually find me. So I had like 2 viewers or something. I just streamed to see how it would go, and I was sort of coming out of what I used to do for a living at the time, so I sort of managed to merge the two, and it went quite well. And Callum Leslie, who used to write for The Dot but does other things now, set up a chance to learn to cast, basically casting Chinese Team Story, which was 2015. It was an unpaid position, and he made that very clear. He's always been very fair. Like, he wasn't making anything, none of us are making anything. It was just a way to be an opportunity, which I think is something that lacks a little bit these days, actually. We just went in there and cast it for the fun of casting it, and that was myself, D2, bumped into A-Bar along the way, whose name will come up at least twice more today, I think. And we did it for the love of it, and then suddenly somebody needed a caster for their $100 tournament or something, and it was like, oh, that Lorinda guy does a lot of casting. I'm like, all right, $100 tournament, we might get 100 viewers. Oh my God, am I ready for this? And yeah, let's have a go. And it just slowly but surely kept being the person who can cast. We're not really sure what he's good at, but he won't mess it up too badly. And moved up using that as my sort of selling point, I guess.
Lorinda, he'll make the least mistakes of anyone that you could pick, maybe. That
yeah,
is
assuming
quite
all the other
the
people have
elevator
got
pitch.
issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, but it sounds like
But
you kind of got in at the ground floor as well, as because back then, I mean, Artosis wasn't even casting; he was playing in the first Blizzard event in 2013, and in 2014, 2015, the landscape looked really different. Like the big tournaments around then, there were Seat Story, I think, was the earliest big circuit that I can think of, but also like Insomnia Games was doing something, and WESL, I think, was the Russian circuit. There were a few.
yeah, Gfinity had a couple of tournaments. And then there's like the Zotac Cups, all that sort of stuff. There was a lot of weird startups that went the same way as Mixer as well at the time. Sort of, let's have a Hearthstone tournament on our startup, and then let's finish off the startup and go somewhere else.
Wow. And so your first event, that was 5 years ago. I'm guessing you've learned a few things since then.
I hope so. I don't know how many I've forgotten, but yeah, I've learned some things along the way. It's been fun. I've worked with probably more people than anybody else in Hearthstone casting because of the perennial tier 2 person, which means I get to do a lot of events with a lot of people, which is something I absolutely love. Yeah, it's been great. Learning things from everybody, basically.
And then, of course, this year has been like completely different than any previous landscape, just for global pandemic issues. So how is the casting different with, the specific state of the world in 2020?
So it's weird not going places and meeting people. That was a lot of the fun. I mean, bumping into you in LA, and for instance, was great times. But the actual casting, we have this sort of stuff sent to us now to help broadcast out. I think one thing that Blizzard are really good at always has been production quality in general. And so they made sure we have the good production quality. And so I'm living in a room at the size of half a cat at the moment. But overall, I don't think that much has changed. It's weird not being able to see in real time your casting partner. So you get some weird bits where you talk over people. I know Gaskin and I used to cheat. So if one of us is counting lethal, we put our hand on the table while the other one kept talking. So that I don't sit there going 7, 14, 12, 63, and the other person goes, shut up, I'm trying to count as well. So one of you put your hand on the table, the other one would keep talking. The one with the hand on the table counts lethal. And then you look like a genius when you go, hey, I think it's lethal. Well, we can't do that now. We just both count numbers out loud and confuse each other. It's much more fun this way.
And how do you manage with the different call times and time zones? For example, you just did the Masters Tour Asia Pacific, obviously a very different time zone from you. Do you sort of shift your sleep schedule, or do you just sort of down some caffeine and run with it? What's sort of your strategy there?
Caffeine and alcohol are your friends. They're not kids. But when it comes to that sort of thing, I find that the best way, I'm lucky that I can sort of sleep twice a day if I need to for short periods. So I might have like a 4-hour sleep and then stay up for 6 hours and go back to sleep for 4 hours, and your schedule's reversed. So that being said, this is an 8 p.m. broadcast for me at the moment, and I've been up about an hour and a half. So maybe I haven't reversed from APAC quite just yet.
Wow, that's crazy. And I mean, like, Hearthstone esports in general has just gone through like a ton of changes over the past couple of years. How have like all the different systems felt to you? Has it changed your perspective, like as a caster?
The systems, I think, so they got better and better and better without any doubt at all until 2018, which for me, I'm biased. That was the year that I got a lot of work, so I'm always going to say that 2018 was going to be the best year ever. I think that 2019, they changed direction. There was a lot of feedback from 2018 with the workload on the players. I mean, I was on 44 flights that year, and I was just commentating on some of the events. So the players like Hunter Ace, I don't know how many flights they got that year. There were events where there was one person reached the top 8 through their match in the last round of the Swiss because they were in the top 8, so they could go and ladder because it was on the last day of the month. I don't know if they threw it, but they played it turbo speed. There was a player sat in the lobby in the hotel for 24 hours straight playing ladder in 2018 just to get the points whilst in a tournament. Like, they were eliminated from the tournament, went and sat in the lobby and just sat there for 24 hours to get the points. You know, that couldn't go on. You can't have players doing that. So although the Grandmaster system came with its critics and its flaws, something had to change to stop that from happening.
Yeah, and we've gone through a ton of iterations, and like there's been so much going on. I'm interested what your thoughts are on the current esports system, and are there any things that you're hoping you see get changed, or where are you hoping the direction of it kind of goes from here?
I think that the actual Grandmasters part itself is pretty close to dead right now. I think it's really good. I think that the qualification and where you go when you're relegated are things that will be looked at over time, because qualification has become a bit of a mishmash of rules and concepts and people putting in a lot of time, and the feeling that somebody has died once they get relegated is also something I think we need to get rid of. Like, the best player in the world got relegated, and deservedly so, by the way. If you go 2-7, there's no excuses or whatever it was. You deserve to be relegated, whoever you are. The problem, if there is a problem, is we don't see this player again if they don't spike a tournament. And whilst that's an issue, fixing it's really, really difficult. Like, you've got to work within the constraints that are available. Do I have a minute to have a bit of a rant?
Yeah,
or
go.
A bit of a hypothetical?
This is all you.
You rant until you want to leave. You just go.
Things aren't quite as easy as just, oh yeah, well, why do this? Let's imagine that I'm Hearthstone Esports and the people above me come to me and say, right, you're running the week before BlizzCon a week-long tournament, and we're going to call it the Mega Tournament, the Mega Finals, and you're going to have 1 week and you're only allowed 4 players. And I say to the people above me, well, that's just dumb, right? And they say, no. Warcraft in 2022 are releasing Mega Warcraft. There's going to be 4 factions, not 2. There's going to be Alliance and Horde and Aliens and a top secret one I can't tell you. So what you need to do, we're going to have all our esports brands have Mega Finals, 4 teams, off you go, and Hearthstone's 4 players. All right, but if we have it less than a week, then we can have it at BlizzCon the week after. That'd be so much better. They're like, no. Legal have looked into it. The legal team, they've looked into it, and they've said, no, you can't have a mega tournament in some countries with more than 4 players. It has to be called a super tournament. And you're like, well, that's just stupid. They're like, well, blame the countries, don't blame us. We're having mega tournaments, that's it, deal with it. And you're like, well, okay, but can we change it? No, we've done the merch already. We can't change anything. Mega tournaments, we're announcing Mega Warcraft at BlizzCon. We need to have the mega tournaments the week before. So me as Hearthstone Esports, now this is all NDA. I can't tell anybody that there's mega tournaments coming up because there's Mega Warcraft coming out. So when I get the feedback, I go onto Twitter, I put a lot of work in, make this mega tournament the best thing I can make it. And trust me, the Hearthstone Esports people work incredibly hard. I will always back those people, no matter what happens, because they work so hard on making it. put all this work into making the mega tournament work, and the first 50 responses on Twitter are like, what the hell is this mega tournament rubbish? It's not going to work. Why don't you have it at BlizzCon? And like, well, yeah, don't you think they haven't thought of that? There's always reasons we don't know for why stuff is bad. And it may be part of a bigger picture, it may just be a bad decision. So when criticizing, try and bear in mind that the structure tends not to change. That's there for reasons beyond our understanding, beyond what we're allowed to do or say. So I've proposed 2 changes to Blizzard ever. I'm not going to go into what they were. And both were accepted because I went with here's what I think you're trying to achieve. Did you realize this is actually what you're achieving? Here are some proposed changes that you could make. And if you can't do those 3 things, work within their structure, make your own suggestions, and then explain why you think what they think they're trying to do is wrong, you're not being good with your feedback. And I think Jeff, Jeph, who I'm going to Google actually, or check out,
Jeff Foster,
is taking feedback right now for, they're one of the admins, and basically taking feedback for things you would like to change. And I would strongly recommend doing it roughly within it's Rhythmic with a K on Twitter.
We post a link to that tweet in the show notes as well, so people can find it.
Thank you. But yeah, if you're going, that's my rant over. That's basically, it's just be critical. Some things don't work. Blah blah blah. Excuse me, just one moment. Okay, that's some good news anyway. So, yeah, to do the criticism properly, think through it, think what Blizzard are trying to achieve, and understand you won't be told everything. Because sometimes they can't reply to your tweet saying, why aren't you having it at BlizzCon with, well, we're announcing Mega Warcraft at BlizzCon. You don't know the bigger picture always. I don't know the bigger picture. This is just my rant based on things that constantly happen, and you see a few weeks later why. Anyway, that's the rant done.
So you're saying that people should think about all perspectives, including the ones they may not know about, and be respectful in their feedback, but not shy away from giving solution-based feedback. How about that?
Yeah, and again, there's nothing wrong with saying I would prefer it if you had 32 players in your week-long mega final. Just don't say this is dumb, because you don't know if it's dumb or not. You don't know why it's being done, so you don't know if it's dumb or if it's not. It might be. There have been dumb decisions made by people over the years. It's a thing that happens.
Yeah, but don't say something is dumb because maybe, in fact, you're dumb.
Or, well, maybe you don't know everything, which might be the equivalent. I'm not sure.
Look at you being diplomatic. Look at you being diplomatic. So, yes, I think the idea. Well, and also it really depends. If someone says I don't agree with this decision versus saying, do the admins even play this game? I think that would be a really big difference. Because
the time they put in is insane.
Yeah. Yeah, and big shout-outs to all the people over there working to make Hearthstone esports the best that they can, because I don't think anyone gets in that industry for the money or for the work-life balance. They get into it because of the passion that they have. And I can speak to, I know Jeff, as you mentioned, has tweeted a lot. Also, Aaron E is amazing. Callie A has been doing a lot of work. The legends of Kyle Knudsen still continue to this day. Yeah.
So Kyle left as the present of top 8 finishers. It was a surprise. A load of people got invited who weren't expecting to, because they made 5 top 8s or 6 back then, I think it was. And Kyle did the numbers and said, we've got space to invite an extra 14 players, or I can't remember the number, something of that order. Yeah. Now, I think this is now a problem because people are grinding to get those top 8s. The whole point was it was a present, it was a surprise. We've got some extra slots. The best way to do it is the people who put in the time as a surprise. And I think that needs to go. I think that top 8 has become part of the reason people are grinding themselves into the ground rather than trying to win a Hearthstone tournament.
Yeah, and it's almost like, I'm going to make a weird analogy here. It's almost like going Soul Juggler, Demons, and BGs and playing for top 4 over and over again to grind your MMR up by like 10 or 15 points. Because the goal here is not to be above average and put in a ton of time. The goal is to win. And so if you want to reward winners, you don't reward those top 4s. At the same time, it's complicated because also the single elimination tournaments are inherently high variance, and that top 8 rule, especially during that first wave of qualifiers, which was Specialist, Swiss, Archivist Elysiana mirrors. Shout out to Semacomp for putting in like 100 qualifiers, I think something like that.
Mhm.
For the people that were playing 12-hour qualifiers in sequence, all Control Warrior mirrors where you sided into double Baleful Banker, double Youthful Brewmaster, you need to do something there. But that problem has been fixed in a whole variety of ways. And so maybe now we need to adjust how people qualify so that players' expectation isn't, I'm just going to enter as many qualifiers as I can and brute force my way to a bunch of top 8s.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what Jeff is trying to research, trying to fix, and again, trying to do it because Jeff will have a better insight than most of us, trying to do it within the framework, whatever that may be, that find out which bits can be pushed and which bits can't. That's always the bit that's hard for everybody else. And Jeff will have a good insight into, okay, well, we can't change this, even though people hate it. Well, maybe if enough people hate this, then you can go to Blizzard and say, look, everybody hates this part. Can we really not do anything? Depending on a scale. So it's always worth saying what you think. And sorry if that was a bit ranty, but yeah, I think
totally
we will
fine.
get there. Things definitely in the qualifiers in particular need changing. And you asked me for my personal view. I mean, personally, if Blizzard frameworks and things I don't understand weren't an issue, I would have a middle tier between Masters Tours and Grandmasters. But I suspect that's just impossible to do. So you get relegated into that tier, you get promoted into that tier, and then you've got a chance to get re-promoted from that second level Grandmasters League or whatever.
Yep, and that system is also in place in Magic the Gathering. They added it after the MPL first season had a similar problem. So I assume the reason that Blizzard isn't is because they can't, not because they don't want to.
That's my assumption as well.
Yeah, the interesting thing I was going to say about qualifiers is we do really want to reward players for consistency and performance, but you don't want it to be over a specified number of tournaments. So it's almost like you want to limit the number of qualifiers you can play in, and if you perform extremely well but maybe not win them, then you get there. But you don't want people doing what Lorinda's talking about, where you just play 100 qualifiers in the time span. You don't want them playing every single qualifier. You want them to play like a specified maximum number of qualifiers, and if they do really well above like significantly above average, then that could probably reward a slot. But you don't want people like killing themselves over it.
As long as they don't know the rule.
So you want to have
I feel we're in danger of losing the sense of competition. Like, we don't want people who get 70% constant win rate. Well, we do want them to qualify, but we don't want to force that issue. We hope that a 70% constant win rate, eventually you win one or you qualify through the system. But if you don't, like, we don't take back Tony Romo's really crap hold just because he had a bad piece of RNG that day. Yeah, they didn't win. Unlucky. Don't do that. Hold the ball better. Get luckier next time. Whatever you want to say. Yeah, we need to have people actually playing the game to win the game, not to grind out some numbers. I mean, I like stats. I love stats, but we need to reward the people who win, not the people who have the best stats. And those two things hopefully will align more often than not.
We need to not allow new members to enter the Yikes Club. Need to make sure the Yikes Club closes its door. And for those of you unaware of what the Yikes Club is, keep listening. We'll talk about it. But speaking of a different system, though, a system that I think has a lot of interesting and potentially relevant structuring that we could adapt here in the Western world is the China Gold Series. They have a very, very different way of qualifying and very different way of playing, but the system is fascinating, and you actually just got announced to cast this. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to seeing this in action. I love watching the Chinese scene. As I said earlier, I sort of grew up in the Chinese scene, and I think that people are going to be amazed how good the Chinese players are now compared to what they were 2 or 3 years ago. I've seen arguments saying they've been better for a while, we've seen them in a couple of global championships, realistically. I know there's been team championships and blah, blah, but not many people watch those. This is going to be the first high exposure event they've got since a lot of the players got a lot better.
Yeah, I think it was a few years ago. There was it was whichever Masters Tour was BO7, or not Masters Tour, whichever World Championship, where I know there were a bunch of like Jason Ju was in it, and I remember after the event he had a relatively high-profile post indicating that they didn't know the format and it changed last minute for them, but also the overall performance from the Chinese players was relatively poor. And then we look at, well, last year's globals. That resulted in the books. Lion in the finals, and who's it? Was it Diana?
Lee.
Top four?
Lee was top 4.
Lee was top 4. And and the most recent Masters Tour, we had multiple Chinese players in the top 8 as well. So you've casted Chinese events before, but how does that culture, how does that environment differ from what we're used to over here in the West?
The biggest difference is the fans, and this applies to APAC to some degree as well, but China in particular. You'll go into a building and the fans are there to see the players. They know who everybody is. They've got their favourites. They'll talk to any player they can get their hands on. It's set up for the fans. There's the stages. We've had some pretty amazing stages at Hearthstone Worlds and at DreamHacks over the years, but China just go completely next level. The trophies, everything about it is like a massive actual sports event, not just, esports gets a slightly lower rating usually for that sort of thing. And China, the people there just love their competitions.
Yeah, it sounds like a very different world. I know also we've covered their system a bit in the past. They have like asynchronous in-person qualifiers. Before 2020 happened, they had moving in-person events that were almost like Grand Prix equivalents. And I recall also they kind of march to the beat of their own drum over there because their events are run by NetEase, not by Blizzard. Specialists kind of ended after about a month over there, and they're still really into last hero standing. They love LHS.
Yeah, I've been doing all of the casts for the team championship as well. And Last Hero in this particular meta works better, I think. It's weird how you can't just say Last Hero is better or Conquest is better or whatever is better. It's meta dependent and the meta is kind of unpredictable. So you can't just say, let's have Last Hero next month because it's going to be the best. You don't know. But for this meta, Last Hero's really a lot better because Warrior can be countered by Priest in basic terms. And Demon Hunter can be countered by Warrior, so sometimes you might ban Druid and set up your lineup to counter the other 2 good decks, even though they're the 2 best decks. And in Conquest, if you don't ban one, or at least before the nerfs, if you didn't ban one, you were a bit stupid in general. But in Last Hero, it opened up a lot more opportunity. And like you say, they do it their own way. I've cast a tournament where there were 4 players going to Worlds, I believe it was, and there was a 5-way tie for 4th. So the next day, they just had an extra broadcast day and ran a 5-player round robin, all play all, like for 14 hours. It's like, okay, this is fun casting this for free. Let's do it. Why not?
Yeah, I don't think that would go down that way on an official cast, but there are some people you could ask in Grandmasters that would prefer that over the tiebreaker system that we had, for example. I think there are a couple people you could ask. I'm not going to say who. I'm just saying I bet there's be some people interested. And yeah, it's much more creative since they don't have the restrictions that are levied by Blizzard. Now, at the same time, we can't exactly translate that out of China into the Americas region or the Europe region because it's just such a different environment. But it's really cool to hear about how they kind of have their own homegrown system over there. Do you think that it changes deck selection at all?
Other than the difference between Last Hero and Conquest, I don't think it changes much. Even then, it more changes band selection than what's the best deck. At the end of the day, the best decks are generally the best decks. They do create their own meta to some degree. So we saw China play Tempo Mage, for instance, was the big one for months before anyone over here started playing it. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's behind is a lesson that people need to learn really fast. But But currently, I think there's a lot of the Chinese players now at least have a look at the Western scene. So the crossovers, it's all merging into one a lot more than it used to. So I don't think it changes the decks much. They did invent and did play a lot of 4-mana pre-spell that steals cards from your opponent.
Mind games?
Yeah, it's only my living. Yeah, mind games. So mind games was teched in against Druid a lot in China. But again, they're leaving, Priest and Druid were played a lot, so you needed the tech. Turns out you steal a Mount Seller on turn 4, 3, you just win the game. Who knew?
Oh man, I don't know what's more
I have, in
tilting,
fact,
Druid
done that
or
move myself.
Yeah, excellent. Like nobody wins when Priest plays Druid.
Mm.
Everybody loses. The viewers, everybody.
I prefer generating a mind games from my Sethic Veilweaver.
Moving
and
on.
then still playing it on
So,
turn 4.
listeners, we're looking for a replacement host for Bodicus, so feel free to tweet at us.
So, Lorinda, in addition to casting, you also do a lot of prep and analysis work, including some very high visibility spreadsheets. I myself have, asked you a couple of times for things. I'm working on a project coming up where I've needed that information. What sort of prompted you to get into that hobby? And did you ever expect that people would depend on your sheets for figuring out who's qualified and things, like who's going to be next into GMs, all that kind of stuff?
Interesting one. Yeah, that's a mix of several things. I used to gamble on sports for a living. We don't broadcast that very often, but I did. And so spreadsheets and knowing people's backgrounds was kind of a skill I had. It's called using Google a lot. But yeah, looking into things quite deeply was a thing. And weirdly, I'm basically a bad version of Sottle in everything I do. I'm sarcastic, sort of Brit with a generally slightly depressing attitude and quite analytical. And I won the caster competition to cast the very last 2016 HCT, I think it was. And the first thing they told me was, well, we've already got a Sottle, we don't need another one. I'm like, oh, well, what do I do then? So what makes me unique if we don't need another Sottle? So I had a think and thought, okay, well, I can do some research. And then it all happened by accident. They sent out the rules for casters, what the contracts are. And it says, please research every player in the event. Now, this turns out this was a copy-pasted email from the 16-player finals. But there's 104 players or something in the event I was casting. So I understood this was a copy-paster. I understood that I could get away with not doing this. And I thought, well, hang on, this is my first time working for Blizzard. I need to not be subtle. Let's just do it. Let's just research all 104 players and work out all their HCT points and Google them all. And I think I got notes on something like 90 of them. Put them on the table, and everybody looked at me like, "Oh, what's wrong with you? Why have you done all this?" And we got to the last match of the day, and it was Diz Demon, I remember, was in the match. I don't remember much else about the match. And my notes were, has the most wins of any player in qualifiers. And now they've got a storyline for the casters. And so I sort of, from that point on, nobody ever said again, why are you doing all this research? Because I helped them have a storyline and figured I enjoyed that. That was fun, getting them to know the tiniest little detail about a player. It doesn't need to be a lot for the audience to go, oh, this poor guy's won all these games and not qualified. And I guess I've kind of done the same thing ever since.
So I'm going to take a moment to appreciate how you took the information of don't be like Sottle, and your conclusion was be informed before I speak. I enjoyed that.
I'm going to enjoy showing him that soundbite as well. Yes,
Please.
Shots fired.
I'm just saying I enjoyed how you said, "Oh, I don't want to be like Sottle. I better know some stuff." So, very pleasant segue. But also, big props to Sottle. I appreciate it. I appreciate his wit. You don't have to show him that one though. His ego doesn't need help.
Yeah.
But so this is like beyond using Google. Is this like just manual data collection? And what's this time commitment look like?
Yes, and a lot. In fact, I daren't even think about the time commitment. I can do some very basic programming, so I can sort of copy pasting results and turn that into something I can read reasonably easily, but I don't have like the ability to scrape screens and Googling stuff in general. I'm looking for something slightly different to regular stats most of the time, especially as there are very competent people like Donkey and Wicked Good now knocking that out of the park anyway. But are there two people called Paradox that exist? Well, there's actually one in each region. There's three, and they all have slightly different gamer tags. And learning that sort of thing is the sort of thing that the data collectors aren't so good at necessarily, because that's not what they're trying to achieve. So Googling all that, finding out who's who and what's what and what's going on is something I enjoy. And yeah, it's a lot of time. It's a heck of a lot of time. But I do enjoy it.
Yeah, what would you say is like the most surprising statistic that you've looked at, or something, something that you weren't expecting to find out from some of the statistics?
How good the best players are over time. Like winning 70% of best of fives or 72, 73% of best of fives over gigantic samples is always amazing to me. But also how much some of the players that we would regard as casuals play Hearthstone. There are players who have played over 500 matches without qualifying for a Masters Tour, just because they obviously enjoy winning their packs, having their fun, getting to round 4 occasionally. Their win rate's sort of 45%. They don't care. They just fire up the next one, play some more competitive Hearthstone. They're not casual players at all. They're grinding competitive players who maybe don't have the time to really, really learn the game properly. That doesn't mean they're bad. And that's amazing. And finally, the most amazing stat is there's one unbeaten player for qualifiers for the original HCT system, and that's Abar. Because he made it to one finals, then stopped and started becoming the producer for Blizzard instead.
That's crazy. All right. So my question is, who is the player we should be watching out for the next Worlds and for this next season of Grandmaster? Who's on, like, based on the statistics, who would you say, oh, we really need to, this person's maybe not getting enough attention, or definitely be watching out for this person?
A week ago, this would have been a slightly more edgy reply, but Alutimu is the person that we've really got to keep an eye on. Has basically done everything but win something now. And the other one of the exact same is Yala. Has also done, he's won HGG, but also has done everything but really spike one. And from China, XHX, who had that 3-hour crazy match with Bunny Hopper that I tweeted the other day. That match is insane. If you can't bear listening to me for 3 hours, firstly, why are you still here? But secondly, just mute it and watch the gameplay, because it's really good. And also Lee's on form from China again, and Sif. Chinese players going to be very, very dangerous this time around.
I honestly can't wait to see how China does this go around, just because they crushed it so badly at Worlds last year. I'm be interested to see just how much their series has an effect on how much better they are than everybody else.
I think something Edelweiss asked me earlier actually about like what's changed in 2020. One of the big changes is the Chinese players have all been able to play. They haven't had to worry about visas or time zones or whatever. They can just get on their computer and play. And I think that's helped them a lot, get a lot more exposure and a lot more practice as well.
Yeah, I think people often don't realize actually just how hard it is to get a visa into the United States. And particularly you go through, the security thing and they're like, wait, why are you trying to come here? Like, for what is this? I remember first time I had to get a visa was going to Brazil. And I basically was like, yeah, it's kind of like poker. And that was,
yeah,
that was the best way I could explain what I was doing.
Yeah, it's really difficult. It's like, well, are you actually? Is that a real thing you're doing? Huh? Like, yeah.
Yeah. It's a hobby. It's fun.
So, but this is
what
this
do
is
you
a good
think?
Edelweiss. I'm gonna jump here because this is a perfect segue to the question that you actually wanted to ask here.
Okay. Sure.
So, how do you explain what you do to people that don't do Hearthstone?
So I'm lucky that due to things like Pokemon Go, etc., that a lot of my friends are under 30. which means that I can say I do some esports commentary, and they'll say, what game? And I'll say Hearthstone, and they go, oh. But at least they understand what it is I do. They're hoping I'm going to be some sort of CSGO host or something, but no. But at least they get it. So in general, that age group gets it. If I'm talking to people my own age, I don't. I think they think I sit in my room and talk to a computer all night, and it talks back or something. I don't really know. Magic, like as in actual wizardry, I don't think they know. I had to set up our chess club online because nobody knew how to like join a button. I had to press a button that says join. So explaining to those people, what I do is hard. You get the occasional, did you see the news about the Fortnite kid? He won some money shooting game. You're like, yeah, that happens every day in my industry, but well done. So yeah, I tend to try once and then just give up and let them, whatever it is they believe I do, I'll elaborate on that. It's more fun now.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so is casting and spreadsheet management your full-time gig right now?
So Blizzard employ me to be the Grandmasters spreadsheet numbers guy. So during Grandmaster season, that's my work. Casting has been my work since 2017. So yeah, basically that's my full-time job. And then in my spare time, when I don't want to look at spreadsheets anymore, I play EVE Online.
That's okay. That's kind of like a spreadsheet in space, though.
Yeah, that's exactly how people refer to it. So yeah, it's not necessarily the most sensible of downtimes, but there you go.
Yeah. And the world of EVE Online, I have not played, but the way that it's not really a game so much as an ecosystem, and the way things go down in this world is kind of unbelievable. It's almost a model for government in a lot of ways. And there have been some crazy, like, giant game-wide events that are entirely player-created that I've read about. It seems like a really, really vibrant scene in a game that's unlike any other.
Yeah, and there'll be more coming very, very soon. Something massive is happening right now in that game. But the fascination with that game is they let the players choose their own ecosystem. So just briefly go off topic, I guess. The game was set up randomized, and different missions, different this, different that, typical MMO. And eventually, the main trade hubs just found themselves. The trade hubs were not set up; you could trade anywhere. And now one of the places in the game, out of all these thousands of places, has like 70% of all the trade goes through it just by natural selection. And yeah, most of the players in it are incredibly smart. I think the joke goes, can I tell this joke? I'm going to tell this joke. That every time a player leaves EVE to play Warcraft, the average IQ of both communities goes up.
Ha. Yes, you can tell that joke.
Okay,
yes.
Good.
And that's from the perspective of EVE players. And
yes.
Yes. And from Warcraft players, they're too busy saying, ugh, this tank doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, exactly.
Let's be real, Hat. Nobody's playing tanks in World of Warcraft.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It's always like, anybody got a tank? Does this healer know how to heal? Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, EVE is a very different type of MMO. It's almost like a massively multiplayer economy as opposed to a massively multiplayer game, the way that we think of modern MMOs. So yeah, very, very cool. Interesting. And now for something completely different, Edelweiss.
Yeah, so, you've been around since before we were even naming years, but we got the name of this year, Year of the Phoenix. How do you feel that it has gone so far? Do you have any strong opinions about the current design philosophy or the power level that you'd like to share?
I think I've said this for like about the last 3 years now, and it always seems just better each time. I think that Chad's done an incredible job since he took over as the design on this rotation. But again, I think I say that every time around. Personal level, can we stop having 0 mana cards? But again, that falls under the rant I had earlier. Somebody somewhere is making 0 mana cards for reasons we don't necessarily know. Maybe 0 mana cards sell lots of packs. Maybe 0 mana cards and lots of more casual players find that really good fun to be able to play 20 cards in a turn. Personal level, I don't want to ever see a 0 mana card again because I hate them. But Power level, I think power creep is natural and necessary in a game that's trying to sell cards to make money. I think that's power creep should exist to some degree. Overall, I like that the sets have a lot more flavor, a lot more theme. I really enjoy sort of being forced to learn what a Demon Hunter was as a non-WoW player. I think it's good they made me do that, even though at the time it's like, oh, really? I have to do this tutorial style thing? But then you read it and they put a lot of effort into it and you go, oh, this is cool. I'm a Demon Hunter, look at me. So, and I've played hundreds of games since, so it worked. So yeah, I think everything design-wise is getting better. Again, 0 mana cards, that's just not.
We had a whole long discussion about 0 mana cards, and my quick take was 0 mana cards are okay. Making cards that shouldn't cost 0 mana is not okay. That was the
interesting. Yeah, how do you decide that? Because somebody will always find a way to make it not okay.
Well, it's the idea of another card allowing cards to become 0 mana, so like Shadow Step or Preparation and stuff like that. But cards like what was your example, Edelweiss? The Paladin spell.
I argued that Libram of Wisdom is like it's designed to get to reduced to 0, because otherwise it's just awful and would be a completely different card if you didn't design it that way. So it's just a matter of whether the thing being 0 was in mind when the card was designed.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so even though it's not 0, getting Puzzle Box for 6, that kind of argument is not designed to be ever a 6 mana card.
Right.
Whereas UI was designed to not be a 10 mana druid card. It was designed to be played on turn 7, and that was obviously a choice that was made. Puzzle Box being played on 6, I don't think was a choice that was made.
And those are two very interesting specific choices, because I don't know if either of one was an optimal design decision. But I think maybe the design issue with UI was... Oh, that was really loud. The design decision with UI was the numbers are all 5 instead of like 4 or something, and the design decision with Puzzle Box was printing it, which I think was suboptimal. But neither here nor there. The real question is, the Botticus agenda, as we refer to it, is that cost reducers are evil, but that cost reduction is not necessarily inherently evil, which is the Edelweiss corollary to the Botticus agenda. There's an ecosystem here. Yeah. Any new cards?
So
that
you commented on...
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that, he commented on Puzzle Box, but are there any of the new cards that specifically jump out at you that you would like to talk about?
Got to admit, I've kind of avoided them on purpose to this point. I've caught 1 or 2 in passing, but realizing that Battlegrounds was a part of the tournament I'm casting next week was a bit of a wake-up. So I've decided to bench all Hearthstone stuff until I need to. Much as I love pre-release season, I love looking at what's going on, and I've just played Battlegrounds 14 hours a day for 4 days, so I've missed basically everything. So sorry about that.
How dare you play the fun game mode for the tournament that you're about to cast? How dare you? Okay, so are Murlocs OP?
No, because transitioning is hard.
Okay. Is Eudora OP?
Yes.
All
because
right.
digging on 1 is easy.
Yes. I like your answers, and so I'm glad you're casting this turn.
Okay, hopefully that goes well. At least I understand the questions. If you'd asked me those questions a week ago, I'd have stared at the wall and hoped you asked me a different question very soon.
Yes. But also, I wouldn't have asked you to be in the podcast. You'd be like, who are you and why are you talking to me during a Masters Tour?
That's also true. That would have been a good point.
It would have been just really awkward for a lot of reasons. So I'm glad we're having the conversation now instead of then. And yeah, Battlegrounds is part of a tournament that's not an invitational is also kind of an exciting thing because we haven't really seen that. How does it fit into the structure of this tournament? Is it like multi-format?
So yeah, there's going to be points awarded, I believe, for the Battlegrounds matches. I think there's 2 per round. And then there's standard after that. And I haven't actually yet got into the exact specifics of how the points work, got to admit. I've been too busy playing Battlegrounds to learn out like how the cards work and what they're called. But yeah, the whole thing matches together. It's a team tournament, so I think every team has a Battlegrounds player, or 2 Battlegrounds players, whatever number, maybe all of them. I don't know. I'll work it out. And they go and battle some grounds and get some points for their teams and work towards getting to that grand final. That China have these very convoluted, exciting systems when it comes to their tournaments. They always find a way to make it go a very long time without getting boring. I'm not quite sure how they manage it, but they do it.
Yeah. I mean, historically, their approach has been give a car to the winner, which is kind of cool. In all those EU versus CN events, I think Tice won an Aston Martin or something?
Yeah, it was definitely a fast, big car. It was Ferrari some of the years. I don't know what it was. Perhaps Tice wasn't Aston Martin. You're likely to know better than me. I forget details.
I just know that he got a really nice car to leave parked outside while he streams 12 hours a day. So
yeah, probably hasn't even had time to get a driver's license yet.
Yeah. That guy is
Pretty sure he took the monetary compensation instead.
He did, yeah.
Yes. Probably smarter, but less fun. Well, thank you for being so forthright in the answers, and we want to be respectful of your time, but we also want to talk about the Masters Tour. So we're going to jump into the tournament section a little early here, and we're going to talk about it while we have Lorinda pick his brain a bit, and then we're going to continue the show after he heads off. So let's head right to the tournament section.
It's the grand tournament!
So, Masters Tour Online Asia Pacific for EU players Masters Tour Midnight. What a stacked event. Lita took down the win over Alutamu, as you mentioned, Lorinda. Tyson Bunny Hopper rounded out the top 4, and Old Boy Lee Just Saying and X-Hope rounding out the top 8. We know basically all of these names. Pretty incredible, very big contrast from the last Masters Tour where I think we had more players that had a breakout tournament. I'm going to intersperse these questions in, actually, because it feels more natural. Lorinda, what do you think do you think there's any prompting factor between the last event being full of players that were maybe a little bit less known versus this event being all players that we've seen these names before?
I mean, they had 2 days of meta to work out, and the more experienced people guessed better how that would pan out. They worked out exactly which level to go to, which was try to beat the decks that are trying to beat Priest. That was kind of the level they aimed at. And all the people who haven't been in that position so often or haven't got teams behind them played Priest and panicked because that was the obvious thing. That's what I would have done. I would have played Priest because it looked like the best deck, because the only deck that wasn't nerfed. So why wouldn't you play it? And the answer is because everyone's going to play Hunter, which the good players knew.
Yeah, 82% of players brought Highlander Hunter, which is kind of insane, but is 2 days after a nerf patch, and Highlander Hunter was technically nerfed, but not that much. And going into the event, it looked like so many players were saying, okay, I want to bring Highlander Hunter and Quest Warlock. And that is instantly a target Priest lineup. And if everybody knows that, Priest is not going to show up and not going to really do all that well if it did, which is exactly what happened. So the winning lineup was Demon Hunter, Highlander Hunter, Stealth Rogue, and Egg Warrior over Demon Hunter, Highlander Hunter, Secret Rogue, and Quest Warlock. Very similar to the last Masters Tour where the 2 flavors of Rogue faced off in the finals, so this was reversed from how it went last time. So with the nerf patch being so close to the event, Lorinda, what was your impression of how the event shook out, and what do you think the optimal amount of time would have actually been to give the players enough time to test but not enough time to solve?
I think 7 days and under is about 7 days. When you get to that point, longer than 7 days, I think there's people just very quickly either copy other people or learn about it or do it on ladder or work it out themselves. Less than 7 days is unfortunate, I feel. I feel that the players should at least have 7 days access to cards. It's just a number that feels about right. It means that everybody who has work or a normal life schedule gets their 2 days, whatever they are, off per week to do their testing that they would normally do. Whereas only having 2 days, maybe those people didn't have that time. Maybe they're working up to the start of the event and didn't get their playtest time. So I think 7 days is a good catch-all for that sort of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And while the announcement was 7 days in advance, just only being able to play with the cards for 2 days, nobody knows how a nerf is going to matter. Nobody has any idea. Because everyone was saying that Rogue is dead and Warrior is the best deck, and things kind of shifted more than people expected in a lot of ways. Is there any lineup or deck that really surprised you with its performance, either positive or negative? Like anything that really jumped out at you that you weren't planning on?
I was just surprised how many people brought Highlander Hunter and sort of got that aspect of it right. And yeah, that shocked me. I did think we'd see a lot more Priest. The number of people who were smart enough not to bring Priest surprised me. I know these are the best players in the world, but even so, it's still a brave call not to bring a deck that looks really tasty just because it's outmetted. And going back to the other thing, actually, people without a team didn't get to practice at all because the meta was different because of Transfer Student. Like you had to practice against that on ladder if you didn't have friends or team to practice against, and that wasn't even part of the decks that were being played. So yeah, it was really interesting. I'm just generally amazed at how good people are at this game.
Yeah, there's the amount of skill present in Hearthstone that may not even be immediately obvious. The levels of not only execution but macro game planning and this kind of lineup prediction. There's really we never run out of stuff to learn. We never run out. And though I will point out that some people without a team were able to get good testing in because Bloodyface just tests against himself and somehow wins. I still don't understand how that happened. I don't understand it, but he keeps winning, so it must be effective. But that is a Bloodyface specific tip. So
he does avoid the echo chamber that way. That's if you're smart enough and good enough, not necessarily the best, and you can avoid the echo chamber and reach your own conclusions. As long as you're aware of what the echo chamber is doing over there on the side, then you're in a good spot, I think.
Yeah. Well, and keeps working out for him. He keeps top 8ing tournaments. So speaking of avoiding echo chambers, well, there was a lot of discourse about how dead Rogue was, and surprise, Edwin Van Cleef, still a good card. Even though Galakron got the nerf and turned from a crazy tempo swing into a slightly less crazy tempo swing that has more of a value focus, or at least on paper it did just fine despite the nerf. Warrior remained really powerful in the event. Highlander Hunter, I think, these players are really good, as you mentioned, Lorinda. They knew it was going to come, and I think that a lot of people were targeting Highlander Hunter. There weren't quite as many go-wide aggro lineups that there probably would be if the event was today. But it still was above 50% win rate, despite 4 out of 5 players bringing exactly that list. Meanwhile, the event was poor for Priest, but also awful, awful, awful for Druid. The Fungal Fortunes nerf hit really hard. It's one of the worst classes on ladder now. How do you think, if the event were today, what do you think a lineup or would look like, or what better decks would look like?
Yeah, so I think we might see the people try and target Hunter straight up. I think that 3 really rapid. You've got to build it right if you go aggro, because Hunter will beat aggro if it's not Demon Hunter in general. But I think we might see some Paladins, like a lot more Paladins with super wide, super early boards. I think that might get it done just on average. And I think we will see people just go back to tried and trusted things. Maybe they'll play Priest with some tech, or just go the other way, bring a normal lineup and ban Hunter all day long.
Yeah. Banning Hunter
But
is
it would walk the meta, right? You base your opinions on what happened last.
Yeah. That makes sense. And we did have one Totem Shaman make top 8, and the Hunter matchup for Totem Shaman is quite strong generally if the Shaman can curve out early, because that Totemic Reflection is Splitting Axe, especially if you get that Healing Totem. Oof, that's juicy. But Shaman is, in that particular Shaman list, a very particular matchup spread. You'd have to be hard targeting, and I think smart players might even be able to build a lineup without Highlander Hunter in it, and then beat all these go-wide aggro decks. So we did mention the Battlefy decklist issue briefly on the last week's cast. People could see decklists, or at least people were tweeting decklists, and there were 15 extra minutes to edit them. Do you think that had any major impact on the event?
I don't this time around. The Vegas one I think did, but this one, no, not at all. And also, these are professional players. Things happen at tournaments. This was something that wasn't Battlefy's fault, as I understand it. Don't tweet your deck list out until you're sure. Like, you don't have to tweet your deck the second it closes. Historically, not just Battlefight, every site, every tournament, they don't start on time anywhere, ever, because things go wrong. Somebody's late who wasn't late on purpose, and it was an admin's fault or whatever. Things happen. So just don't tweet your deck lists out until you're sure. I know it's unfortunate, and I don't really want to lay into those people too hard. But if you've been to more than one Hearthstone event, you know that anything can happen, or any sporting, esports, whatever event. It's not just Hearthstone. It took you're herding cats. There's 330 cats in a room. You've got to get them into a box. Things go wrong.
Yeah, and human error is a thing anywhere there are humans, so maybe schedule that tweet an hour after the event's supposed to go live.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, games to watch. There were a couple games that really stood out to me that also are the Coin Concede Discord shared. Briarthorn versus No Hands Gamer. I don't know what kind of mage deck to call this. It was being referred to as Arena Mage on the cast. This was a goofy game, and Briarthorn, who used to be known as Brimful, who used to be known before that as Sphinx Manatee, a very creative deck builder, a new Grandmaster. This list was fascinating, but I would not recommend bringing it to games. But it was really fun to watch. Also, Tice versus Alutemu Game 2. I mean, that entire series was also just really, really great. The entire top 8, the average level of play quality was very, very high. And glad to see as well that Lita took it down, because Lita's been a grinder for a long, long time.
Yeah, Lita is somebody who I don't think really got enough recognition. He's always crops up on the spreadsheets. I know when I first saw him play was in Italy 2018, surprisingly enough. And he just wasn't that great, but he was obviously committed and getting there. And then we sort of had this blackout year 2019 where we didn't really see anybody play. And suddenly in 2020, he's just really, really good. And we're going to have to be very careful with quite a lot of players who we thought were kind of average in 2018. Average, we're talking top 100 in the world when I say average here. But, sort of average at the top level. And we're going to see a few players who we just have written off or forgotten about prove that we're wrong and just have learned so much in the last year or two. A year's a long time in Hearthstone. The game's only 6 years old or something.
Yeah. It's the beta was late 2013, but I think we can officially say the game started in 2014. So it's really not that long when, again, the game that we all came from, Magic the Gathering, is celebrating its 26th anniversary, I think. It came out 27th. It came out in late 93. Wow.
Okay.
It's a long time.
It is. I remember it being released.
You didn't have to say that, but now I'm leaving it in the show. So, are there any storylines that viewers may have missed that you want to draw attention to?
The letter one was the main one for me. Drivio, I can never get his name right, started 0-2, and against what seems to be conventional wisdom, which I hate, just stayed in the tournament, went 7-2 and picked up $3,500. Which, do that. Stay in the tournament, go 7-2. Just do more of that, please, people. Of course, it's a night out of your life and 2 nights for $3,500. And if you go 0-3, then sure, do whatever you feel you need to do. But you can qualify for 2 more Masters tours on top of the money. That's a lot of money in its own right, in value. And also, to some of the Grandmaster type players out there who drop on 0-1, 0-2, 0-3, some of the people who qualify for these tournaments have qualified for their only tournament they're ever going to qualify for, and they want a chance to play you. So can you do them the favour and just stay until you go 0-4 drop, so that those people who playing the biggest tournament of their life that they're going to remember for the rest of their life maybe get a chance to play somebody they've heard of? That'd be really good.
I like that a lot. Grandmasters being ambassadors for the game, and honestly, it can be difficult for people in the scene to forget, or it can be easy for the people in the scene to forget how much of a role model they may end up being. How much someone may say, I want to be like Bloodyface. I want to be like Bunny Hopper. That the people that we see all the time on stream, that we want to be like them. And we have a new crop of GMs coming in. I love that No Hands Gamer's been getting a lot of media attention as well. And I think a fantastic example of triumphing over adversity. Great example. And even at 0-3, I'm sure someone would want to play against a spicy No Hands brew. The issue is that No Hands would have to lose, and that just isn't something that happens all that much. But theoretically, I definitely agree that representation as an ambassador of the game is so important. And looking at the standings here, the 7-2 bracket was kind of crazy. X-Blizes very narrowly avoided yet another top 8. I don't know how Blizes is so good. I have no idea. But just rattled off that 9th place, barely missed top 8. It's him being in Grandmasters is going to be crazy. But there are a lot of names that we know at 7-2. Hunter Race is up there. Eddie is up there. Captain Kitty. Hello, Captain Kitty. You're in the chat. I see you. Gabby is up there. 7-2. Half as many wins as his age. Muzzy is in there. Frozen is in there. Zim is in there. A lot of really, really strong players at 7-2. So this event seemed to really reward skill in a way that if the names are this familiar, there's something to be said for the consistency of the performance of those players. Speaking of which, when will Dead Draw be a GM?
Heartbreaking. Not that he's not already, although massively mitigated now by the fact he's joined Team Liquid and is going to be streaming. So presumably, the way I have joined Team Liquid and will be streaming sounds like a thing that's in his contract, which sounds like a good contract because you don't stream if you don't want to. And good contracts make you want to do things. So sounds like he's doing okay. But when will he be a GM? After the next 2 Masters Tours, please, would be nice. It's such a shame. But also, if you try and actually write out a system that makes him a GM, that doesn't put in people that you don't really want to be GMs, but also doesn't leave out the people who have won Masters Tour, it's really, really hard to actually write that system to specifically get him in, even if you try and cheat it. So it's nobody's fault. It's just how it goes. Although, got to remember there's a real person behind that sentiment, and I feel very sorry for him.
Yeah. Though he keeps playing like his life depends on it, and he keeps winning a lot. Incredible performance in Masters Tours, and earnings do not reset until the end of the year. So still currently in 4th place overall, behind Lita, who will almost certainly be a GM, Pignass, who is a GM, and TNC Answer from the China region, who is not going to stop any EU GMs from getting in. So as of right now, if we were to close today, then Dead Draw would get there. And I think I can say a lot of people are rooting for him, all of us on this cast included.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate your time, Lorinda. And speaking from what you talked about as an ambassador for the game, we're all really big fans of you being an ambassador for the game and of your outlook and perspective. A lot of the things you've shared on the cast today have lined up with what you've said before about just being a mature, nuanced person that plays Hearthstone and recognizes some things may not be perfect, but this is still the game that we love to play, and also just your general approach to human interaction. Our former co-host Appa sends along his big thanks for just the level of humanity that you show when interacting with other people, and that being positive pays dividends and really has a meaningful impact on other people's lives. So thank you from all of us for that.
No problem. I enjoy being a part of this community. It's one of the best communities, well, the best community I've ever been a part of by a long way. And hopefully we can all get back to some events and mingle again at some point in 2021.
Oh, please. I will take just one real world back. Just one real world. That's all I want. Be able to... There's something to be said for the experience of hanging out between rounds, waiting for the next thing to start, and sharing bad beat stories. There's something to be said for that. It's a core part of the card game experience. The late night questionable bar and karaoke decision, the hungover rounds first thing next morning. It's I don't have to explain it to you all. You all know, but cannot wait for the familiar ups and downs of IRL Hearthstone to come back. So, Lorinda, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to find you online, where can they do that?
You can find me on Twitter at Lorinda Games. More than welcome if you're interested in stats. If you're not, then you probably shouldn't bother, but you can anyway if you want. And thanks for having me on the show. 250 today. It's a good achievement for you guys.
Yes. Thank you so much for being on. And we'll talk to you soon. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Lorinda, you can stop your
All right,
recording
thanks so much,
here.
Dana.
Yes.
Mhm.
You can stop your recording here. So do the save thing first. It'll tell you it's not a file that I can play, and that's fine.
I stopped recording and now save.
Yep. Yep. And then you will do file export as a wave, and it will take a few minutes, but save it wherever you want. I dropped a Google Drive link in here. Once that wave exports, then you can just plop that wave file right in.
Awesome. And I must dash because I've got another thing I've got to do to set up for next week now.
Oh, goodness. Good luck. Have fun. Any questions, ping us in
Okay.
Discord, but thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me. Honestly, it's been great. Cheers.
Cheers. All right. Time for camera readjustment. What's up, Twitch chat? How you all doing? Thank you for tuning in. Lorinda's great, isn't he? We're gonna nudge some cameras around here.
He is great.
Big fan. Also, I hope Saddle doesn't hate me.
while you're adjusting stuff, we should probably just get into Life and Ladder.
Yeah.
Edelweiss, how's it going? How's Life and Ladder been?
Going all right. I wasn't sure I would make it today because of work, but we managed to get done just in time, so that's fortunate.
Yeah. So what have you been up to this last week?
Honestly, grinding some stats myself from Lorinda's data. I sort of assembling a list of all the highest earners from the Masters Tours over this year, and I'm gonna look at that. I'm gonna look at potentially like highest win percentage over qualifiers, and I'll see if I can pick out some players for a project. But I can't really say more than that. Just hopefully it'll be a good thing.
I mean, I'm sure it'll be good,
Interesting.
but
Yeah, it sounds very interesting, very cryptic. I like it. I look forward to when you're able to announce more. As far as me, I've been still playing a bit of Path to Exile, played a bit of Diablo 3, and realized like they're similar games, kind of, but Diablo 3 has like so little you can do, and Path of Exile has way too much you can do. But yeah, in addition, I also got to play a little bit of Hearthstone this last week. I played, actually dipped my foot into Wild because I didn't really feel like playing Standard. So played a bit of Nonsense Rogue over in Wild and had fun locking some people out with Lotheb and Sonya Shadow Dancer. Yeah, just did a lot of nonsense. Had a lot of fun doing that, and played week 5 of the listeners series, and had some very fortunate draws my past couple weeks with Priest winning some pretty heavily unfavored matchups. Very that Totem Shaman matchup. I don't know how I won it, but got very lucky, I guess is how we got there. So yeah, played a little bit of Hearthstone, a lot of other games, watched a lot of Critical Role, etc., etc. Pretty standard week for me. What about you? How's Life and Ladder going over with your intense streaming schedule?
it's, I will say, involved content creation schedule. I looked at my schedule. In 3 weeks, I'm going to be on 10 podcast episodes. I think it is about a podcast every other day. Last week was 4 podcasts in 4 days. This week is 3 podcasts in. Well, no, I got Friday off, so I did Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. Next week is Wednesday, Thursday. Oh no, I'm taking Friday off. Only 9 podcasts, unless I get on another one. Yeah, I talk a lot, and somehow there's enough to say that's different on all of them. So was on the Angry Chicken again this week. Had a great time. The Data Reaper podcast, of course. We just did our last one for the Ashes meta. Next week I'll be on the Backlash podcast. Last week I did the bonus episode for us and was also on Off Curve. Hearthstone has a lot to talk about right now, and it's a good time to be a Hearthstone gamer. I have been playing a little bit less. Beginning of this week, I kind of realized that hydration, food, and sleep are important because I didn't have enough of those three things, and then it felt horrible beginning of the week. Really, really bad on Monday and Tuesday. So I'm trying to figure out how to be an adult without the external structure of active employment. While I figure out what's going on with active employment. But content creation, start up the YouTube channel. Gonna have a video right now. It's every weekday, but I'm gonna try and have a video up later today as well. Just getting some bite-sized snapshots from the stream at the moment. 2 or 3 games with a particular deck, including some losses because it's important to show that it's not just winning all the time. Trust me, it's really not just winning all the time. And gonna work on optimizing that content, see if I can record some intros or whatever, maybe do some top 5 cards or whatever, but just figuring out as we start. The support has been really great. Big shout out at the top of the show now to Dexter, who is he keeps rating me with 200 people, and I don't know, guy is awesome, love his content, super nice fella. I don't know how I earned that, but it's amazing. He's just a really swell guy, and it's helped a ton with visibility. And so I cannot thank him and really the community in general enough. There are so many regulars in the stream that are hanging out. Number Theory keeps gifting people subs, and it's awesome. And a lot of just really, really supportive people hanging out. So it feels good to be a part of that, even if life can feel a little overwhelming at times. And I will also say some of this is self-inflicted because Ghost of Tsushima is a really good game. It's a really good game, but also it's 50 hours, and I love side quests. So,
Oof.
I'm not going to say that's been taken away from the eating, water, sleeping thing specifically, but it has been. So I'm working on that. Trying to find balance. Trying to find some balance. Trying to play video games certain...
Is it out yet?
It came out on the 17th. It came out last week. Yeah, last Friday
I'll
was...
have to wait till my birthday.
Last Friday was Ghost of Tsushima and Paper Mario the Origami King. And so, yeah, the wife got the cartridge for Paper Mario, and she started that first. I started Ghost of Tsushima first, and we're going to switch. She finished Paper Mario already, but I am doing the side quest thing. So that's been taking up some time. Still playing Hearthstone, still enjoying it. I'm floating around top 1,000. It's been hard to get a hold on this meta. The decks that I've been doing the best with, straight up Dragon Hunter with an Enrage package. Not Highlander, just Dragon. Because Stormhammering people is great, and Og Merchanting and Enrage 2-drop is great. But also, I found a priest list from a Korean streamer that it's not split priest, it's Galakron priest with double Plague of Death, doesn't play Sethic. It plays 2 of the Evil Conscriptor, the 2/2 Death Rattle Adalaki to your hand for some reason, and it's been good. And double Sandhoof Waterbearer, and it's been all right. So posted some goofy games on the YouTube for that one, and enjoyed it for sure. But really, this meta is not going to be solved by the time that the expansion comes out in just under 2 weeks. And we're also, as an aside, we need to figure out what we're doing because normally our show would be on the day the expansion comes out, and I wonder if we should nudge it a day or something to give ourselves a day to soak in it.
We'll figure that out. But what everybody who's listening should do right now, and it'd be a big favor to me and probably a big favor to Hat as well, is go to youtube.com/ridiculoushat and hit that subscribe button. You should really do that. He's only got 91 subscribers right now. That's criminal. He's already got 6 great videos that have great intros, and I look forward to watching these. But make sure you go to subscribe to our boy Hat because he deserves it.
Thanks, buddy. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yo, big ups to
But,
Brian O'Brien and Chad who just made that 92.
There we go. We need to get those numbers up. But other than that, that seems like a good cap to Life and Ladder. We got a bit of news, but I want to rush through the news because after news we get to talk about new cards, and we're already an hour and a half in almost. So we need to make time for cards. So let's go to news. Go.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
All right, so we have a final reveal stream announced. It will be on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. And then I assume that means we'll have, so after Wednesday, we'll have all the cards and we'll get to know all the craziness that's going on with Scholomance Academy. In addition, there's going to be a Fireside Gatherings online edition, which will be the July 31st and through the 1st. We have a link to the details of how you can essentially do like a solo Fireside private gathering thing. Make sure you click the link because even I'm not fully sure how that works. But if you want to open your packs early so you can get right into playing when the expansion gets released, make sure you look into that. Also, that's also how you can get the Hero Portrait Nemzi if you still don't have that yet, and also the Fireside Gathering card back and all of that good stuff. So if you're into pre-releases, make sure you take advantage of that. What do you got, Edelweiss?
Yeah, so as usually I do a pre-release at local host. Obviously that isn't happening. I can talk just a little bit about the Firesides. Normally, you had all this information and it's got to be like a public venue and everything for your event. Right now, they're just letting people do private gatherings. So it's much less information that you enter. You just have to put in like the date and time, the duration, so how long it's going to run, the maximum's 8 hours. And then, just center it on your house, right? And you'll be able to play against anyone that's in your household who's on that Wi-Fi. But that's it. So in a sense, it's kind of just opening your packs if you don't have someone else that you live with that you can play against. But at the same time, I know at least in my case, it's nice to be able to open those packs early and then be able to like dive right into deck building on the day of. I will add one caveat though, it's only packs that you have purchased as a pre-purchase bundle. So you can't buy packs with gold. It's just if you got one of those two bundles, the $50 or the $80, those are the packs that you can open.
Yep, so make sure if you're looking to do that, you click the link or search for it on Google. I'm sure it's not hard to find. In addition, we have, obviously, reveal season is going on right now, so we have a bunch of amazing reveals. We had a Firebat Wrap video that went out, but the one I look forward to every single expansion is Amazing LP, and unfortunately, I hadn't had a chance to watch the whole thing, but I watched like the first minute or so, and I got I don't know if either of you have had a chance to see it yet, but it has kind of like a Kingdom Hearts vibe almost. I don't know if you got that, or just like, it's really, really cool. It's so amazing whenever we see these. So that's literally the first thing I'm going to do as soon as the cast is over. But Amazing LP does insane card reveals, and you should definitely check that out. There was also a overview video that was released that kind of gives an overview of Scholomance Academy mechanics and kind of some of the cards, and we even got a couple card previews just from people freeze framing when they do like a card splash across the screen, and we're able to get a couple extra reveals from that. So if you're into reveal videos, getting excited for the new set, this is a great way to do it. Bunch of great content getting put out there. Can't really talk about all of the amazing content creators doing reveal videos, but you should really check them out if you get the opportunity.
I will also say we have to shout out the Firebat Wrap, right?
Oh yeah,
because that was
yeah, it was it was quite funny. I enjoyed it quite a bit. In addition, last couple notes we have here is that Masters Tour Madrid has been moved to online and is now going to be taking place on October 23rd. So, yep, just of note to people playing in or trying to qualify for that Masters Tour. And we also have the announcement of the China Gold Series casters. One Lorinda will be one of the casters, in addition to Giadi, Gallon, Naraya, and Language Hacker. Did I say that right? No, it's Nayara?
But are we talking
Nasil.
Nairia, the player, or Nayara, the Brazilian caster?
Nayara.
Nasil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. So anyway, yeah, that's going to be happening July 27th through August 2nd. And I mean, yeah, so much good stuff coming up, bunch of good stuff in the news, but the big thing to talk about, I think, is new cards, because we have some spicy ones, some controversial ones, and a whole lot going on, a whole lot to get excited about for Scholomance Academy. So I think we should probably just jump right into Decksplanations.
We should, but real quick, the CN Gold Series casters, love we got some GMs doing it. Love that we're getting, Nasil has been a Brazilian caster for a long, long time. Been involved in esports for 4 years now. Super excited to see her on an international cast in the English language. It's great to see people work really hard and have it pay off. And honestly, one of the nicest people in the scene. And that whole Brazilian practice group, that whole with Nalgadon, of course, but also with Lucas DM and Race, and they terrorize online qualifiers. So watch out for them at your next Masters Tour. All right, new cards. Let's go. All right, so low-key, I'm going to have a little fanboy moment. Darrock and Raven have both been in our chat today, and I'm not saying I'm freaking out, but like, holy shit.
Yeah, they were just here for Lorinda, though. Let's be honest.
Listen, I am okay with being cool by association. Totally fine. I do not need first-hand brushes with fame. I will take secondhand. Totally okay. Yes. And right. Raven, I know you just got here. Don't worry, we made fun of Sottle for you. Got it.
It was actually a sick burn. It was quite nice.
Yeah.
So Decksplanations. Obviously, we're talking about new cards, and I didn't really know what time we'd be at according to our schedule. So I figured we just highlight some of the most talked about cards and go into them and see how much time we had left. So I think the number one card that I want to talk about, because Hat is here, and I'm sure that everybody also wants to hear discussion about, would be a new Demon Hunter card.
Oh boy!
Name of this card
we're just starting with this, huh?
I mean, we don't have like a ton of time left, and I don't want this to go for a 3-hour episode. So we're gonna talk about Glide. Glide is a 4-mana Demon Hunter spell to shuffle your hand into your deck and then draw 4 cards. With Outcast, your opponent does the same. So, all right. I've seen a bit of discussion about this, but let's hear it, Hat. I want the reasoned responses. What are we looking at with Glide?
All right. So here's the thing about this card: we don't review the card; we review the sentences. Because the top half of this card and the bottom half of this card both deserve discussion, and there's a lot of nuance here. But I talked about this a lot with Zacho yesterday on the Vicious Syndicate podcast as well. The most important thing about this card is it is 4 mana draw 4. That is the most important thing. It is 4 mana draw 4. And if you take a deck where your top end is 2 Skulls, 2 Glides, 1 Cane, and everything else costs less than 4, then that deck is probably really strong. Probably really good. If you try and put this in current tempo Demon Hunter, you are raising the curve, it's going to be clunky. It's probably not a good idea, right? And you want to make sure that you avoid this card being a 4-mana plot twist. Because if you have a bunch of cards in hand, even if they're bad, if you get rid of those cards and get 4 new cards, it's fine, but that's a big tempo loss, and paying for card draw sucks. I really liked one of Jombray's takes, where he said, this costs too much for card draw, and someone said, well, what about Skull? And he said, well, that costs -3, which I think is accurate. Glide is a card that enables a different kind of Demon Hunter deck than the one we have right now, even lower curve, even more aggressive. And I think that is the part about this card that is the most worrisome. Now, there's more to it than that, because there's the second sentence, your opponent does the same. There are two takes on that sentence. One is power level, one is play pattern. In terms of power level, this idea that you're going to be playing a super aggressive Demon Hunter deck against a control deck that just keeps 2-for-1ing you with a whole bunch of cards in hand, that's not how Standard works. That it's, if you're against a really aggressive deck, you play your cards for tempo, not value, and you try and play multiple cards a turn, and it's the same way you used to play against Divine Favors control, except there's an upper limit on this, right? Even if you hit the Outcast, if you're a late game control deck, and your opponent plays this for refill, your cards are designed to go 2-for-1, and you're not going to be limited by mana as much. So if your opponent's spending 4 mana to put 4 new cards in both of your hands, and you have mana and time, the chances of your card's a control player doing well against their aggressive cards, when you get the initiative because you didn't pay 4 for card draw, and you have a bunch of removal, you're probably going to be okay as the control deck, unless you are some control deck that we don't have right now, because control is not playable because of all the Galacrons and also Highlander Hunter and a lot of reasons. It's like, it could be good against Dark Skies. It's good against Quest Warlocks, I suppose. But you're assuming that if you're playing Glide and hitting a few cards in your opponent's hand, even if you shuffle them from 7 cards or 8 cards to 4 cards, if it's a late game control matchup and they have mana and time and they're not almost dead, then I don't think it's going to be as devastating as you think. Now, on the other hand, even if it's not that powerful, the play experience of getting cards while taking cards away from your opponent is not going to be a pleasant one. And when it happens, the people on the receiving end of this are going to be extremely upset. It is going to feel really bad. And I don't know if it will be too powerful, but I know that there will be complaints about it. I know that it will feel really bad. And that is the part that I question why this was printed exactly as it was. Because it's not permanently removing the resources from your opponent, but it's disruption needs to be built very carefully in Hearthstone. And while I don't think this is a great disruption tool, I do think the experience of being disrupted by it, if it hits the intended target of your opponent has double the cards that you do, it's going to cause such visceral reactions in players that I'm surprised that they went with this design.
Exactly
I
what
would-
I expected from Hat. Go ahead, Edelweiss. I
would
don't have a
say
lot to say about this card.
more even than potentially reducing someone's number of cards, what you'd be looking to do with this is hand tracking your opponent, seeing what cards that like they kept in their mulligan that are still there, and if they're still there, maybe you just run it out if it's got Outcast, even if it's low tempo, because it's like, well, they have a couple of cards they kept in the mulligan. I'm gonna get rid of those, right? Particularly, say you're against a mage, you want to get rid of that Reno or Rolling Fireball or something that's going to be coming up to deal with your board. They might get it back, but they might not. And as you said, Hat, control decks are going to be trying to keep up with you. Same way with Divine Favor. The way you played around Divine Favor was just play your cards, right? So similarly against Glide, if you can just keep making tempo plays, maybe not getting the full value from your card, you're going to make the value of a Demon Hunter's Glide a lot worse. I think my comparison that I made was sort of the way that Glide is good against control decks is the same way that Divine Favor was, and the way, but it's bad against aggro decks. Not that it's unplayable the way Divine Favor was, but because you're drawing both of you a bunch of cards. So it's going to be a pretty different play pattern from Divine Favor, potentially. 4 mana's a lot, so I also will try that same kind of really low curve deck. Probably I'm going to go with some South Sea deckhand and maybe with no Warglaives or anything, maybe Eldrachi Warblades as your weapon. But it's going to remind me a lot of 6-set Paladin, where it's just a whole bunch of aggressive, cheap stuff, and this is card draw. And it'll be really frustrating if that works. it feels like this design is sort of all or nothing, right? Either it's
Kinda.
what it promises to be, or people are going to realize that it's not quite good enough. It's too expensive, too clunky, and then we stop playing it. I don't know.
Yeah, to me, this card looks like a Divine Favor that I think is going to act not nearly as powerfully as Divine Favor did. It, for one, obviously, it costs 1 more mana. That's much more difficult for it to be useful, and just the way that it interacts, even with people with a bunch of cards in hand. Like I guess that's the dream case scenario, right? Is you run out of cards in hand, and then you play this when your opponent has 9 cards in hand or something. And I just don't see that situation coming up enough. I think that, just Skulla Gul'dan lets you do so much more with your deck, letting you play 5 drops in it. And I think you need that kind of stuff in the deck. So, because in the situations where you don't draw this card with all your card draw, because with a card like this in your deck, you can't play a bunch of cards that draw cards, because otherwise this card sucks. And if you don't play a bunch of cards that draw cards and you don't draw this card, then you just run out of gas really quick. So it's it's definitely interesting. I think it warrants a lot of discussion, but I think it's going to fall short of a lot of people's expectations. And I think that I'd still rather run a 6 mana Skull than a card like this, just because it'll let me play more expensive cards that make up for the fact when I don't draw my Skull of Gul'dan.
Yeah.
But
this isn't Divine Favor. This is Jeeves, right? This is Jeeves.
yeah,
It's you are playing this card to spend all of your cards and get some more. Sometimes you help your opponent. Sometimes it hurts your opponent. And so you play this like you would play Jeeves. Your curve is super low, and then you jam Jeeves, and then you draw some cards, and then you hope it's good enough. And 4 mana is, you usually aren't a Demon Hunter deck that's going to have 10 mana, and you play this and then immediately play all 4 cards. And usually in that type of deck, if you lose board, you lose, right? It's the cards you draw are used to keep pressure on, but if you play cards on turns 1, 2, and 3, and then you glide on 4, you're taking a turn off. And taking a turn off is a bad idea. So you have to be able to play this at the end of a chain of pressure to keep the pressure going, and I think it will be possible to do that. But as built, I don't know if it'll be all that powerful to do that compared to what we're already working on with Demon Hunter. Now, Demon Hunter still isn't figured out. We got new cards coming. There's a lot of ways to do it. The new card philosophy works really well with Frenzied Fellwing, so maybe we'll be dropping 2, 4, 3 Frenzied Fellwings and then drawing a bunch more cards. I don't know. There are ways to build a deck with this in it. My issue with the design of Divine Favor is that it is a matchup-dependent blowout or blank, and this is never that. This is always, you're always going to be able to draw 4 cards. The fail case is better. The high roll, I think, is a better experience for both players, because even if I'm up 4 cards and you're down 4 cards as a control player, I think that's still preferable to paying less mana for me to be up 8 cards, because I can meter those cards, I can meter the pressure, as opposed to both of us get 4 new cards, and sometimes you're going to glide when your priest opponent has 3 cards and you're giving them 1. So I am concerned primarily about the play pattern of experience of people on the receiving end of this, especially in environments or with players that are playing decks that are a little bit less refined, maybe in players that are a little bit more casual in their engagement with the game. If you play something slower and you're trying to get a really cool combo off, and your opponent is playing a more aggressive deck, and they glide you, it's going to feel awful. It's going to feel really, really terrible. I worry about this experience on the new player ladder, about people playing decks with curve vanilla minions and maybe really expensive combos they're just trying to pull off, and the experience of getting those cards taken away is going to be unpleasant emotionally. Power level wise, I don't see it being like format definingly broken. I do see it being good in some builds. The question is, are those builds going to be good? But as far as emotional experience, that is where my concern is with this card, because getting a bunch of cards in your hand taken away is going to feel really bad.
Yeah, it's the mana burn effect.
Yep, exactly.
Not good, not quite good enough to see play, but when it does see play, it can feel really bad because you're not able to do your stuff. All right, keeping with the big hitters in terms of discussion, I think these next two kind of go similarly, but we'll start with Sphere of Sapience. It is a 1-mana 0/4 neutral legendary weapon that at the start of your turn, look at your top card. You may put it on the bottom and lose 1 durability. All right. I really wanted to talk about this card because I saw a lot of people talking about how this goes into control decks for card quality, like looking to improve your card quality over cards drawn. I think that is not a great way to look at this card. I think this card, for the most part, is not very good. I think the use case for this card is for decks that have cards in their deck that they do not want to draw. And specifically, the only deck that came to mind for me was Quest Warlock. I think that specifically being able to have a fairly an okay chance to put a Malagos or a Dragon Queen Alexstrasza or something expensive on the bottom of your deck, and then getting to the bottom of your deck, being able to guarantee draw it for 0 mana is very powerful, and that is the only use I see out of this. I know Hat was talking about putting this into a deck like Galakron Priest to get to your very specific cards, but the problem in my mind for that is that Galakron Priest already has issues drawing cards, and if you're putting a card in your deck that takes up a slot that I think the amount that you lose from something like that outweighs the benefit of maybe getting to like an Apotheosis faster. And even if you're getting to an Apotheosis faster, there's less minions in your deck because you're including a card like this, so you're drawing less, so you have less things to put it on, which already you kind of can struggle with sometimes because all of your minions get cleared all the time. So I don't think this card goes into your traditional control deck just because you don't really care too much about your card quality in those decks because all of your cards do somewhat similar things. So the specific use case is actually putting the card in a specific place in your deck so that you know where it's at and you can mess with that a bit more. But I'm interested to hear both of your takes on this card because neutral legendary weapon is quite interesting. Edelweiss?
So for me, I'm really excited to see how the UI does this. I'm guessing it's just a discover that says like top or bottom, but it's really unique. We haven't had that decision before. It's also the first time we've had real reference to locations in a deck besides top card, I feel like, right? You know, the way we talk about tracking is like act like those cards were on the bottom of your deck. The only other things we've seen are things that are like burn the opponent's top card with the
Gnome-Feratu.
2/3 Warlock card in Wild, Gnome-Feratu, that kind of thing. But as far as I know, there's not much else that refers to, you know, put a thing in on the bottom of your deck. So I think there'll be some times where it's like, well, I don't want this now, but do I want this as my bottom card? And also, if it becomes your bottom card and then you shuffle your deck, right? That's not something we've really worried about before, right? If it's put on your bottom,
Sightless Watcher and Bad Luck Albatross was kind of a
Glide.
thing, right? Like Sightless Watcher in particular with Bad Luck Albatross and
Sure.
Wrench Caliber, but that was top. You're right, bottom card has not been referenced before.
So it's just kind of weird to think about, okay, what are the situations where you're going to put something on the bottom and then your opponent does something like Bad Luck Albatross or Bomb or Glide, and you know, does it stay at the bottom? Is it going to get like fully shuffled with those? Does shuffling something into your opponent's deck differ from Plot Twist Glide, right? Plot Twist and Glide very explicitly shuffle your deck and then you draw new cards. But does shuffling a bomb into the opponent's deck or an albatross into the opponent's deck just put the card somewhere in the deck, or does it actually shuffle it?
We have clarification on this, actually. We do.
Okay.
Celestlon tweeted, if it says the word shuffle, it shuffles. If it does not say the exact word shuffle, then the order stays the same. So if you see the word shuffle, the deck order is re-randomized.
Okay.
Okay.
that was the question I was going to have.
Because I could imagine a world where that is not how it happened, right? Where
I could also,
shuffle is just like
it
an easy
randomly
way of
puts the
describing
card.
put this randomly somewhere in the deck.
Yeah, I could see shuffle your hand into your deck just means your deck order stays the same and the cards get shuffled in randomly. But that's interesting to know that plot twist will actually, if you put Malagos on the bottom and then you plot twist, then the Malagos can be anywhere in the deck, assuming you don't draw it. So that's also, something to note about this card if you're putting it in Quest Warlock, because you're playing plot twist. So maybe that means it doesn't work the way you want it. So I think that the narrowness of this card makes it not as hype as a lot of people are making it, but I think the effect, I think that's the biggest thing with this set in general, is just there's so many effects that feel almost like all of them are Zephyrus's, where it's like, holy crap, they're actually doing this. And that's crazy. Do you have a lot to add about this card, Hat? Or anything to add?
Yeah, just be careful, listeners. It's a common trap to fall into, that having the right card on time is worth spending a different card. The Unquestionable Rogue, we played the quest and never triggered it to activate our questing adventure or questing explorer. And so if you start down a card and then you play a card that draws you an extra, you're at parity. You're back to where you started. So if you play Sphere of Sapience to draw a card that kills two things, congrats, you're at parity. You have spent a card to gain a card. It would have been better to not play Sphere of Sapience and just play a better card in your deck and mulligan more aggressively. Because the most effective way to choose what you're going to draw is to use the mulligan function more aggressively. It is a free 0 mana, replace this card and draw a card. And if you're not using that and then you're putting this into your deck, you can save all that effort by just using the in-game function and making sure that you're setting yourself up for success with consistent deck building and making sure you're looking for what you want without spending mana and cards on it. Because being down a card sucks really, really badly. Top decking this is going to be awful. And even if you're looking for a specific thing, if you're playing a mana-efficient deck with limited card draw that needs specific answers at specific times, that deck sounds suboptimal. And there have been times where you want to play that particular configuration, right? And I think maybe you could say something like Spell Druid often hit that, but Spell Druid would just mulligan aggressively, and instead of card selection, it had card draw. And the best form of card selection is having more cards. So playing this to compensate for a lack of card draw actually makes that problem worse and not better, because you still lose to card draw even if you get the better answer at the better time, because you spent a card on the 0/4 weapon. And it's usually not going to be worth it.
Yep. But
And,
speaking of... Oh,
go
ahead. Go ahead, Edelweiss. What do you got?
Sorry, I had one final thing, which I don't know how much this will impact or not, but I actually wonder about the use of this card, not actually for the scry, not for the ability to put something on bottom. That's great for combo decks, but I'm curious about its usefulness for game planning, right? Just, I don't know.
But you see the card and then you draw the card. Where do you get to plan?
Oh, wait, no, it's not like Future Sight. Never mind. It's not like the
No.
top card of your library is always revealed.
No,
okay.
no. And it's only at start of
Scrap that.
turn. If it was all
Misunderstanding. Only at
card
start of
draw
turn.
as well,
Okay.
if it was all card draw as well, I'd like it. It is only before
I mean,
you
that would
draw
be a
your first
nightmare.
card of the turn. Well, it
Can you
would
imagine
only
plot twisting?
Oh. Yep, you're right. Never mind. That's awful, terrible. But it's a very creative card. I like that they're trying new things. And speaking of trying new things, let's take this effect and dial it up to 11 with Lorekeeper Polkelt.
Yeah, so Lorekeeper Polkelt is a 4-mana 4/5 neutral legendary battlecry. Reorder your deck from highest cost card to lowest cost card. Okay, well, so it didn't take long before I realized if you put this card in Galakron Rogue and you play a Togwaggle with the Lackey in play and take a wand, then you get to play this afterwards and then play the wand and you get all your most expensive cards for 0 mana. Also works if you already have Galakron in hand. Yeah, so Also works kind of with the Quest Warlock thing. If you really want to make sure either you draw a zero, like you complete your quest and then you can play this card and tap and make sure that you get a 0 mana high cost card in your deck. Also works for other decks that can reduce early cards with like Amalagos, like reducing Amalagos in Rogue or Warlock. Quite good. 0 mana Malagos, pretty good. Not a card that should be cost 0 mana. Talked about it before. So yeah, this card has some scary implications, but I'm interested to see if there's safe uses for it, because all I can think about right now are unsafe for my mental state health stuff. Yeah, this card seems good. What do you what thoughts have you all had about this one?
This is an Edelweiss card.
It is. This is a combo set. This is my set. I don't know. I think enough people were saying about how combo hasn't been around for so long. Well, it's here. Combo's back. I think that's why they printed the disruption as well. It's kind of how they do it, right? They know we've got all kinds of combo stuff, so they throw in some disruption. Yeah, I could imagine a world where maybe you do something like you use the scry weapon so that you put stuff on the bottom of your deck. You memorize the order of those bottom 4 cards. You draw through your deck, and I don't know, maybe you like Farsight Amalagos or something because I have this many cards left. I know what my bottom 4 cards are. Do something like that. Or just like, yeah, you play this to order your library and any mana reduction thing, like Bot was saying with the wand. There's going to be all kinds of degenerate stuff. People say, oh, maybe you run this in Highlander Hunter and you just have big sledgehammers coming down turn after turn. I think it's a terrible plan, because the whole point of those cards is to have them come down on curve. So you're never playing this on curve, which means you're sitting on a card for a while, just so that your turns from 10, like you play this on 9 and your turns 10, 11, 12 are all solid. Well, that's the reverse order you want to do things. You want your opponent to already be dead by that point. So I think this is sort of a strict combo card that will involve a lot of experimentation to figure out what decks it's most degenerate in, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see some unusual combo decks coming about because of this card.
Edelweiss,
Deck ordering is just not a thing we've messed with too much.
I was about to just say what I saw Mad at Arms say in chat is you play this on turn 5 in Demon Hunter, and then you guarantee the Skull Top deck on 6 to draw a 3/5 drops that now cost 2 mana.
No.
You get
that's not the order we're doing.
9.
You are taking Glavebound Adept out of the deck, because what you do is the top end of your deck is Skull, Ultra Cane, and those are the only cards that you play at 4 mana or above. Beyond this, even if you play it on 4, you draw a Skull on 5, you draw a second Skull on 6, you Skull into Ultruous, Cane, and something free. And then you do that, and your opponent probably dies in the next couple turns. And so that is the only application I can think of where we want this card on curve, and we absolutely want this card on curve in that deck. That's not the Glide deck, that's the Polkelt deck. But we can have a Yeti on curve that also happens to set up Skull into Ultruous and stuff, and if the only other 4 drops in your deck are 1 Skull or 1 Ultruous, 1 Cane, you are guaranteed to hit both of them even off the first Skull, and that means you are guaranteed any future cards you draw from that if you on the second Skull are going to be 0 mana. So spicy, right? Spicy thing. Now with that being said, this is a combo card. Standard format needs a little bit of combo, and this card is going to be broken by smart people, but a combo piece that you can't play until late game, even has a low mana cost, is hard to work with. Because if you have ever played Quest Warlock, and your hand has 0 plot twists and 3 9-mana dragons, then you know how awkward that is, and then you die those games. So, don't let the mana cost fool you. This is a part of a larger turn, and that means we have to get to that later game in a format with a lot of powerful mid-range stuff going on. but combo needs to exist in some level for Hearthstone to be healthy, because otherwise it turns into a mid-range fiesta, and I am glad they are trying some stuff, and I hope it isn't broken, but there will be combo decks that use this. The question is, how scary will they be? And I don't know yet, but I'm glad they're trying stuff, and I'm also glad they've committed to nerfing quickly if they need to.
Yeah.
Do we know how this interacts with things that get reduced? Right. So if
it's reduced cost in your deck, then the reduced cost is used. The green number is used.
Okay.
So
That
you
makes sense.
could, if you're playing Libram Paladin, reduce down to 6 your Libram of Hope. It's now less than your Liadrin. So you play this,
Correct.
and you definitely get Liadrin.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, if it reduces cost in your deck, it will be reduced. So like your Flesh Giants will be 0 as well.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing that was noticed was the Shirvala interaction with playing this and then Holy Wrathing on 9 mana for the full 25 guaranteed.
Yeah, and I'm not sure the wording
it's
on
interesting.
Shirvala specifically. I want to make
Yeah,
sure.
because I feel like it's reduced in your deck, so maybe it doesn't work.
Oh wait,
the
so
way you
I'm
want it.
actually okay. I looked this up. The Celestalon tweet. Giants actually change cost in your hand. So there are two different effects. If you have so I'm gonna edit the whole previous part. All right. So in terms of reordering with mana cost reductions, if it's something like a Giant or Shirvala that says cost X less, that text is visible in your hand. But if you play something like Incanter's Flow, which reduces the cost of spells in your deck, that's a buff to the cards in your deck, that matters. So, I mean, I guess if you're playing an all-spell deck, they all stay in the same order anyways, because they all get reduced by 1. But if you have something that says make X cards in your deck cost less, then that cost is used. But the base cost of something like, say Flesh Giant or say Shirvala, those change in your hand, not in your deck, because the text is not visible. It's not active in the deck, which is why
yeah,
Holy
I
Wrath
mean-
works at all. Yeah.
This card is just super interesting, and I'm sure we haven't thought of all the cases that it'll be used for, but I'll be interested to see how it works. And I know I'm skipping around here, but we're talking about combo, and so I really want to talk about this card that is anti-combo if combo gets a little too crazy. Hopefully this card does what it says, and that's Starred Student Stellina.
Say that 5 times
So
fast.
4-star Student Stellina. Gosh darn it. All right. 4 mana, 4/3 Demon Hunter Legendary. Outcast. Look at 3 cards in your opponent's hand and shuffle 1 into their deck. All right. Yeah. I mean, if combo is a big thing and it relies on specific cards in hand, this has a shot at disrupting combo. And I'm glad that it's only in Demon Hunter, because I feel like this is a card that would get quite frustrating to play against if you're trying to play combo. Just the effect feels feels not so great to play against, but I'm glad that this is involved, I guess, because I don't know, because maybe we might need combo disruption. What do you two think?
Is this card even good? It's if you don't outcast it,
I
it
don't know if
does
it's
nothing.
good, but is it necessary, right? It's not about being good, it's about being necessary for being able to disrupt decks that you know are going to have specific cards in hand that you need to get out of hand.
It's not discover. It's look at 3 cards. You can see duplicates. If your opponent has, if they're Quest Warlock, you're playing a lottery, and hoping that you hit one of the good cards. And typically the combo decks have a lot of draw. If you're hoping to hit a combo deck, either we have the fastest combo deck that Hearthstone has seen in a long time, or you're not playing this on 4. In which case, it's, I guess, in the matchups that aren't combo, you just jam it on 4 and hope. I want to hit a removal spell as an aggro deck with this, but the stats are so mediocre. Having some kind of disruptive effects in standard is probably a good idea. We have a few. We have Unseen Saboteur. We have Blatant Decoy. We have options. I think this effect is interesting, but the card as statted seems... I don't know where I'd play it. and I don't know what would make me feel like it was worth the inclusion.
It's essentially 4 mana, 4/3. Make your opponent discard a card if you have Outcast, though, right?
Kind of like it shuffles it back in. It doesn't go away forever. It shuffles it back in. If playing against Psychic Scream has taught me anything, this says put that card on top of their deck. But like we're also, how hard is it to set up Outcast on a 4-drop? That's not easy to do either. You're not going to play this in Control Demon Hunter because that deck really struggles with outcasting stuff. And so you have to be playing this in an aggressive deck that can manage their hand. Turn 4 is very early to do that, so it's unlikely to be online at that turn. And I'm trying to figure out when I can play a 4/3 as part of my turn for this amount of mana with a straight face and be happy about what I'm hitting. Like, I don't... If this was legal and standard now, what would be looking to shuffle in that would make a difference that is better than just playing a more aggressive card and sticking with plan A?
Yeah, I don't know. I was just putting forth the idea of a combo disruptor. I honestly, other than like of all of the 4 cards we've talked about, Polkelt looks like the most playable out of them. I think they all have use cases, but I think the only one that I would expect, like these are just all cards that have been talked about a lot, and Polkelt is the one that seems like it has viability, but I wouldn't be surprised if the other ones find space in deck lists at some point. It's just I don't think it's going to be as widely accepted into deck lists as probably a lot of people are expecting them to be.
Yeah, I think I'm with Hat on the aggro version of this, right? Same as the 2 mana 3/2 that makes spells cost 1 more on your opponent's turn. I like this not for disrupting combos, but for disrupting my opponent's board clear for a turn. And if it's not good enough at reliably doing that, then I don't think it sees too much play.
Perfect. All right. I don't know how much more we want to go into, but Hat, why don't you talk about the next card, since it's a rogue card, and I know you love rogue cards.
All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4. I think 6 more cards, including this one. These 6
Okay.
highlighting in the show notes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
Infiltrator Lillian, 4 mana, 4/2 rogue legendary. Has stealth, and then Death Rattle, summon a 4/2 Forsaken Lillian that attacks a random enemy. First of all, I'm glad they printed a Lillian Voss that isn't poo, because the previous one was a very bad card. Those that don't remember, it was back in Knights of the Frozen Throne, and it transformed all of your spells in your hand into random spells from your enemy's class. I did get Legend with that in my deck, because I played against 2 Druids, and they both gave me UI, and UI is a very good rogue card, but Lillian Voss in general was terrible. So this is a very different take on it. This is instead, this is it's a stealth threat, really comparable to like Piloted Shredder more than anything, but also it has some of that cool new Battlegrounds tech where the minion that you summon immediately attacks. So I think this is generally going to benefit whoever pops it on their turn, because if you're against, say, a Highlander Hunter and they have a Feywing in play and some other minion, Feywing and a Felmaw, you can just trade into one of the 4 health minions and hope to hit the other one. Or if they have other minions in play, you can clean them up first before you make the trades. If you attack face with this and your opponent is on Murloc Paladin or something, and they can just play a 2/1 before they attack, they can pop Lillian and hope the second copy hits the 2/1. But it's also not that bad against board clears. Say, for example, you're against a Priest and you have an opening stealthy aggro start, and then you play this on 4 and they go Breath of the Infinite, and then, okay, take 8, because you take 4 in your turn and then 4 in my turn. Interesting, and I think it will be, like, this is not going to be deck defining, but I think it will be surprisingly annoying and good at helping make a rogue deck that cares about the board and not just scamming 0 mana cards. And so I like this direction. Feels very roguey, even though it's some mechanics that we haven't necessarily seen before, at least in this configuration. And I wouldn't be surprised if rogue moves more towards the sneaky stuff of maybe a little bit more weapon manipulation, maybe a little bit more stealth, maybe more of a focus on death rattles, and trying to move away from being priest with knives. Maybe. I don't know. But
Edelweiss, does this make it in 4-weapon rogue? Or what do you call your rogue deck?
4 swords.
4 swords.
4
'cause
swords, yeah.
I'm a Zelda dork. Yeah, I absolutely am throwing this in 4-weapon rogue, and I wonder almost if there may be like a minor death rattle sub theme, right? There's a couple of stealth things that have death rattle now. The 1/3 that draws a card, this, and the prime, which you kind of run just as a stealth minion. So I wonder if you maybe do this, and there was another legendary that summons a couple of 1/1 versions of death rattles. Could be another inclusion. Maybe not. That would be leaning more mid-range than aggro for the stealth deck. So I don't know, but for sure this makes the cut, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I like what this card is doing. It's just, I don't know. It feels expensive, kind of. I don't know why. 4 mana seems like a lot, but is probably not as much as I expect. But Edelweiss, why don't you take the this next one we have on here, if you have it pulled up, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so we have yet another Flametongue Kavu, our 4 mana 3/3 Priest Warlock minion, Battle Cry. If your hero's health changed this turn, destroy target minion. So the obvious thing is Priest and Warlock. Priest can hero power to heal themselves for 2. Warlock can tap to take 2 damage. So you're gonna have a way on 6, most likely, unless you're a priest that hasn't taken damage, to be able to activate this. That's pretty expensive if we're saying 6 mana for a 3/3 blow something up. But I think both decks have potential ways of getting this down earlier. Priest, it is more difficult, I think. You pretty much need to have taken damage in some way and have lifesteal. Warlock is going to be a lot more consistent with something like Neferset Thrasher comes to mind. There may be some kind of zoo, it's been tried a little bit here and there with like Neverset Thrasher and the diseased vulture. Not sure if that's the actual name, but it's something like that. The self-damage warlock. And honestly, I love that the 3 mana 3/4, whenever you take damage, gain 2 mana crystals. That card is very powerful, and it's been kind of disappointing to not have it see too much play. So maybe this gives that deck just a little bit more of a power spike so that it gets more payoff, because Neverset Thrasher, a lot of stats for 3 mana, but it hurts a lot. Like lightning, dealing 3 damage to yourself every turn with your attacks is going to get you pretty low pretty quickly. So finally seeing some solid payoffs for that is going to be really nice, and I think we'll have yet another new evolution of zoo to be playing. There's always something, and I certainly like this over the dormant imp version where you just like hold onto your cards for a bit and then go all in with Magic Carpet. I'd rather just play stuff on curve.
Yeah, this card's super interesting because I feel like it's a card that Priest needs more than Warlock and uses a lot worse than Warlock because of the fact that you have to be damaged and it's hard, and you're going to generate this card after you Galakron, and it's going to be hard to heal yourself, and sometimes you won't be able to heal yourself, and then it's kind of vanilla. So it kind of does more than an Aeon Reaver and also less than an Aeon Reaver, which is kind of strange because the whole clause of just being able to destroy it unconditionally is tempting, but much harder to pull off. Whereas Warlock doesn't need this card as much because it has so many ways to do effects like this. But I think the one use case scenario is exactly what Edelweiss is talking about with the Neverset Thrashers and kind of a self-damaging zoo that just has a lot of tempo innate in itself and can make use out of damaging itself and kind of getting onto board early, and is much more interesting than, say, aggro Demon Hunter, which just kind of gets to do everything aggro Zoo got to do without taking all the damage to the face, or not caring as much about taking the damage to the face. So I don't know, anything to add, Hat, or should we go on to the next one?
Yeah, I think that if this class combination is gonna work for Priest, then there need to be some cards that we haven't seen yet. And we've seen, I think, 3 of the 4 Priest Warlock cards, right? It's Brittlebone, Flesh Giant, and the one we're about to talk about. So we're just waiting on the common. And I hope whatever common it is helps Priest manipulate their life total a little bit more. Because if Priest cannot consistently manipulate their own life total for a low amount of mana, then you're really dependent on sticking a minion with lifesteal, and that's gonna be hard to do. If we can cast this for 4, that's great. If we have to cast this for 6, including the hero power, that's bad. So I don't know. If we can consistently make this a Vile Spine Slayer that costs 1 less, obviously that's amazing. And minions that, when you get to play a thing and kill a thing, we know that's good. But you have to want to fight for tempo, you have to want to fight for board, you have to be okay at it, and you have to be able to manipulate your own life total for 1 or 0 mana. And it's a lot of ifs. And Zoo Warlock in general is better at that than Priest is right now. So I'm hoping there's some cards that enable it. Because as of right now, it feels like something I'll be happy about to generate off of Galakron sometimes. But also, if you're Galakron, you lose the healing hero power, and you have armor. And so it's hard to manipulate those 2 things, because if you heal yourself or if you're not damaged and then you take less damage than you have armor, your health total's not changing. I think it'll be more awkward than it looks. But speaking of cards in this class combination that I think are awesome, let's talk about disciplinary.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Hat?
Okay.
Interesting. I should have planned this out, but I'm gonna have you take this card because it's so juicy.
Okay, so Disciplinarian Gambling, 4 mana 3/6. After you play a minion, destroy it and summon a 4/4 failed student. This is the Priest and Warlock legendary. Yo, people out there, they're gonna at me and say, "But what about Takan?" That's what you're gonna say. You're gonna sound exactly like that. I know people are gonna say,
No, I wouldn't say that. I would never say that
Yeah.
because this card is completely different on a
Yeah.
lot of levels.
It's, first of all, 4 mana 3/6 on curve. That is how much that costs. There is no stat penalty. Second of all, Takan only works with lackeys, which are only generated by specific cards, and it's also a 5 mana 4/4 where you have to take a turn off. Second of all, you play this with any 1-cost minion, and you are probably really happy. If it's a Fiendish Servant that is 5 mana for a 5/6 and a 4/4, deal. Take it. Happy about it. With Death Rattles, it's awesome in general. With cheap minions.
Eggs.
Very good with eggs. Very good with like Mermy. Just feed it a Mermy, and that's fine. Put this in your Carpet Zoo decks, and you'll probably be happier than you were without it. And that's it. And maybe Priest can do something about it, because like it's fine with Disciple of Galakron, but all the Priest and Warlock cards seem to be really focused on Warlock. I don't see the Priest applications as much here yet. And maybe we're missing some stuff. Maybe Minion Priest is a thing, and they are trying to make Minion Priest a thing. But I think this is a very strong Zoo card. Build your deck with it. Don't build your deck around it, because if you build your deck around it and then you don't draw it, it sucks.
Yeah, this is the card that we wish Dark Pharaoh Takan was. Because, yeah, it looks like a Dark Pharaoh Takan, but is not, because it actually has stats that you'll play. It's almost like, it feels more like a Houndmaster Shaw, because it's just like the effect if you don't kill this card right away could be massive if your deck is built in a specific way. So I like this card a lot. I expect to play it in Warlock. I don't know about Priest. It's kind of iffy for Priest, but maybe there's something we're missing. We'll find out. Anything to add, or do you want to take this next card, Edelweiss?
No, what you all said. I love a tempo legendary on 4, right? A legendary that I can play on 4, and my opponent looks at it and they're just like, "Oh man, they just played that without getting immediate value, but I don't have the answer, so I'm about to get wrecked." I love that. Dragonbane was one of my favorite legendaries. Houndmaster Shaw, one of my favorite legendaries. It's not classes that I typically mess with as much, except for Zoo, but I'm sure it will also be one of my favorite legendaries. So really looking forward to that. But in terms of something that we will be doing in Priest, I like Cabal Acolyte quite a bit. So Cabal Shadow Priest, you may remember, 6 mana 4/5, targeted Battlecry Steel, a minion that that has 2 or less attack. Cabal Acolyte, 4 mana, 2/6 taunt. Spellburst, gain control of a random enemy minion with 2 or less attack. This is going to be really, really brutal against some aggro decks that have just, a bunch of smaller things, because just running this out on curve, and it's a lot of taunt that you have to get through, and if you don't get through it and you have something that they can steal with something, a cast on their next turn, it's going to be such an enormous blowout. But even if you don't get the spell burst, it's a solid thing to put in the way. It has to be dealt with pretty quickly. And if they do go turn 5, this coin or something to get the spell burst immediately, it'll be even more frustrating to deal with. We're playing a lot of 2/3s. If you can't get their Enrage activated, they might get stolen, and that's going to be rough. Side note, you can play this with Lazul's scheme, I believe, right? Where it gets upgraded each turn, and 0 mana, reduce the attack of an enemy minion by however much it's been upgraded. And that's going to be super rough for any deck that is more mid-rangey and looking to play, one big thing on certain turns, because you can just do some targeted steal, right? If they have nothing else that is 2 attack or less, you just play this and your scheme, and you guaranteed get to steal. So the gain control of a random enemy minion with 2 or less attack may seem like it makes it a bit worse than the Cabal Shadow Priest, but coming down earlier and having ways to manipulate attack with spells it's not going to be as big a drawback as you might think.
Now I'm interested. You got me more interested now. And also, Renew is a card that's going into every priest deck from now till eternity. So even if you don't have coin starting out 5 mana, 2/6, gain 3 wherever you want it, and steal a thing is also going to be quite good. So having multiple ways to proc this cheaply is something that's very interesting. And I very much like the that 0 mana card with this. That seems quite interesting, but we'll see. And I wanted Hat to take this next card because it's a filthy Demon Hunter card, but I'll talk about it.
I can take it.
Ace.
I can take it. I moved it
All right,
around.
you go.
All right, that's fine. But hold on, Cabal Acolyte.
I know you're.
I'm not done with Cabal Acolyte. I put this on the list.
All right, fine.
Why does this card only cost 4? This feels like more than 4 mana worth of stuff, right? Am I crazy?
I mean, you do have to. The Spellburst cards require you to have spells that you want to play. That's the thing, right? Like that's the whole idea with the Paladin Warrior Maul that has Spellburst, and you get to make a minion with attack and toughness equal to its casting cost once. It looks great, right? It looks great if you get to play that 3-drop into a 4-drop spell on curve and get a 4/4 along with it. But if you look at Warrior and Paladin, there's no, as far as I know, there's no consistent spell that you want to be playing on turn for every game to get the effect. With all of the Spellburst cards, you have to have something in mind that you get to consistently do when you play the card. And if you don't have access to that, then it's actually quite a big drawback, because it's not like Battlecry and Death Rattle, which just happens regardless. This requires other cards in your deck that you have to consistently have when you're playing these cards. So while I love the idea of the 0 mana spell that reduces the attack and you get to steal a specific thing, you still have to put that card in your deck, you have to draw it, and you have to play it with it. So it's a card combination that you can't have every single game, and you have to decide if that drawback is worth including both of those cards in your deck for that specific combination.
I mean, when is the last time we had a 4-cost 2/6 taunt? It's like Convincing Infiltrator is 5 mana 2/6 taunt, and that thing feels like a brick wall.
Archmage Vargoth.
Okay, yes, technically true. I don't want to get caught up. Hippogriff. Okay, with 2/6. Like, maybe I'm reading too much into the stats here. I'm not thinking about the Spellburst. I think the Spellburst is a really nice upside. As far as a mid-game priest defensive tool, a 4 mana 2/6 taunt seems strong. seems like a good card. And then we have the Spellburst as just upside. The Spellburst feels like it's free. Spellburst feels like it doesn't cost anything when this card is
wouldn't you just play Vargoth in every deck then, if that was the case?
Well,
like, Vargoth is in standard. Wait, is it still?
Vargoth is in standard, but it doesn't actually have taunt. It has soft taunt, and sometimes you don't want to copy spells, right? Like, but unless you think Vargoth.
I mean, if that stat line was good enough to just see play regardless of the rest of it, I think you would just have Vargoth in every deck. I don't think like you would just play that in Galakron Priest. I don't know that there's a card in Galakron Priest you're like worried about copying.
You don't really want to time rip your own stuff, or Apotheosis their minions, or Grave Rune any of their stuff.
Yeah, how often
or
is
Forbidden Words?
How often is Forbidden Words isn't in any priest decks.
I guess not. But like Vargoth doesn't actually have
Vargoth doesn't
actually have taunt. Vargoth doesn't protect your face. Doesn't have the word taunt,
which is relevant, right?
Like, it's having the word taunt does seem relevant. I mean, I guess we're not running Convincing Infiltrator right now. It feels like if you want to be a priest deck that really controls early game board states, that's a lot easier now. And before we were reliant a lot on AoE, and now we have an honest to goodness taunt minion that's really annoying to trade into. It just feels relevant because also the Spellburst effect is powerful, right? And if it was just a blank 4-mana 2/6 taunt, obviously we don't spend this much time on it, but the Spellburst feels like a throw-in, and yet seems quite strong to me. So there are a lot of ways to set this up. On 5 with a spell, this is good. On 4, just on its own, it feels like it really helps like the Highlander Hunter matchup, right? Or any of the Hunter matchups. It's just a lot of damage soaked up, and 2 attack is relevant. It feels like we don't have all that many good anti-aggro tools in Standard, and this is a strong one.
Also, another advantage to something like Bone Chewer Brawler versus Amani Berserker, the Enrage effect goes away if you heal something. The Bone Chewer Brawler effect, or Bone Chewer effect, does not. Yeah. So, you might think play this with Circle of Healing. So if they've gone Amani and then Aug Merchant, you could heal and then steal the Amani. You cannot heal and then steal the Bone Chewer Brawler because it'll still have the 4 attack.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It feels like the deal here is really, really good. Even if you don't necessarily trigger the Spellburst, if you're just looking to be a priest deck that survives, and the Spellburst can be really relevant. So I wanted to actively talk about this card because I feel like that this is 5 mana worth of stuff in a 4 mana body, and I guess they wanted to make Spellburst better. But I don't remember getting this kind of stat line with that kind of effect together, and it seemed significant to me.
Okay, I don't think I agree. I don't think the stat line is good enough. As just like you would play it. It feels to me like you're talking about you're playing this even without the Spellburst, and I don't think you ever play a 4-mana 2/6 taunt without the Spellburst.
Well, no, we don't play a blank 4-mana 2/6 taunt. But we do play 4-mana 2/6 taunt with upside that also is a 4-mana 2/6 taunt on curve if you need it against early aggro starts, which have historically actually been difficult for Priest to deal with. Because it's a lot of times you lose if you have Breath of the Infinite and they go Satyr Overseer, and Acolyte just kind of helps deal with that in a way that I think works. Sometimes you lose to like the early. I mean, Highlander Hunter. I doubt the matchup gets better because of this card specifically, because every card in their deck beats every card in your deck. But it's a nice APO target. It guarantees that your opponent can't put that early pressure on you. It sets up. It leads into the time rip turn. And if we want to play chains of taunts as well, we could do that. We wouldn't play this if it didn't have the Spellburst, but it does. And I'm surprised that there's no mana premium for that text being printed on the card.
Okay. I think if Renew wasn't a card, you would never play this card. I think that without Renew being in every single priest deck, I don't think you'd bother playing this card. Because I don't think that there's any 0 mana or 1 mana card that goes into every priest deck. Like, I think you need a cheap card to be able to trigger the Spellburst before this sees play. And I also don't even think that I would put this in Galakron Priest at this moment. But I've been wrong about a lot of cards before, and this could be one of those that is, like you said, too much for too little mana.
Yeah.
So
I mean, not even too much, but just like a good deal. And sometimes good deals are hard to find, and sometimes good deals are staring you in the face. And this one feels like a deal that I want to take. So I don't know. But speaking of a deal, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I want to know if a 3-mana 2/4 is a deal you want to take.
Oh boy, I have no idea about this card. So this is Hunter Ace's card that they named after him for winning the World Championship last year. This is Ace Hunter Kreen. It's a 3-mana, 2/4 Hunter and Demon Hunter card that says your other characters are immune while attacking. I have gone back and forth on this card many, many times. Do you want to play this on 3 on an empty board? Never, ever, ever. It's terrible. It's bad. It's not the right amount of stats. Do you want to play it when you're getting into board battles? Absolutely. You really want to play it when you're getting into board battles. And if you're able to play this and make like 2 trades and your minions survive, it's probably worth it. But I don't know how often that's going to come up. Now, if this costs like 0 off of Skull, that's pretty rad. But we're not playing Warglaves anymore. And a lot of the times you want to play Warglaves and keep your health total high. I mean, Demon Hunter didn't even really care when it was good about keeping the health total high. You wanted to cash it in and then kill your opponent. There weren't a lot of times where your decisions were different based on your life total. Maybe in the mirror match, I guess. And in the mirror match, if you stick some minions and then you want to trade with them when you start your turn, then sure. But if you don't want to trade, this card does nothing. And if you're playing this and trading because you keep your minions, it's a commanding shout. And we don't play that card. So I think this card looks really tempting and appealing. But it encourages trading, and I hate trading. And neither of these green classes want to trade. They want to go face. And it's not immune while being attacked. It's immune while attacking. So, like, I need a deck where I'm developing early, expecting my minions to stick, and then hoping to trade with them. And that doesn't feel like how I want to play either class right now.
It's interesting. I think the stat line makes up for it, just because 2/4 is so awkward at that mana cost. And I think this survives a lot of things that early in the game, which lets you do funky stuff with trading early to develop board. And I feel like this card just kind of sticks around and is annoying for a lot of decks to deal with. So I feel like this is a card that could find a spot because it feels like you're getting a lot, or it feels like you could make a lot of use out of the clause. I think, like you said, it's fairly irrelevant that you're negating the face damage. I don't think that was ever something. I mean, it's kind of insane in the mirror to negate the face damage, just because that can be such a huge swing in terms of getting board control without losing a lot of life. But I don't know, just the 3-mana 2/4 is just a weird stat line, and in my head it sounds like it lines up against a lot of the removal really nicely in the format. So feels like it might have a spot, but I could be misjudging it. Feels like if Rogue is really strong, this card is less strong, just because I feel like Rogue deals with a 2/4 really well, but a lot of the other classes are doing like 3 damage and 2 damage to things, and it's just you're not going to be able to kill it super easily. But I guess if we're playing Cabal Acolyte in a lot of decks, then all of a sudden it becomes more of an issue, right?
Oh, if Acolyte takes this, that priest, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it also is a card for a type of Demon Hunter that we don't have right now, because this is for Demon Hunter that trades, and this is not a big trading meta that I can think of. It's good in the matchups where you were already trading, which are your good matchups. Like, it's really good against Murloc Paladin, but Demon Hunter was beating Murloc Paladin because your trades already lined up well. So it has to be in a matchup where you would trade if your trades were favorable, and you don't right now because they're unfavorable. And I think that's going to be context dependent on how the Demon Hunter decks and the Hunter decks are built, and if there are trades that we're currently not doing right now because they're not worth it, and they become worth it if our minions stick around. But Commanding Shout is never seen play, and this is better than Commanding Shout, but I don't know if it's a lot better. And 3 mana, you basically have to play this when you already have other stuff on the board, and depending on this as a combat trick sort of thing, is, I don't know, seems kind of tricky. It's really bad when you're behind.
I assumed this was a card for the mirror. That was the one use case, which the Demon Hunter mirror used to be very prevalent. So
yeah, that's
I don't know. What do you? Why don't you give some thoughts before we try to get wrapped up here, Edelweiss?
Yeah, so we may not have played Commanding Shout, but there was a period where we played Violet something or other. I believe it was
Illusionist?
4-3. Violet Illusionist, yeah. 4-3, you're immune on your turn. And while that was used for some fringe fatigue strategies, one of the things it was used for in Standard for a bit was with a card very similar to Warglaves. There was a 5-mana, 3/4 weapon. You can attack as many times as you want with it, but it could not go face. So you would use it as a sort of 8-mana board clear in Warrior sometimes to just be able to make a bunch of attacks and clear minions. So this does feel a bit more oriented towards the kind of control Demon Hunter that is bringing back Warglaves a whole bunch. Could maybe see a place in Highlander decks just because you're Highlander, so things get more consideration. I mostly don't like it because it doesn't help you against secrets. And I really want this kind of thing to let me bypass a Flame Ward or an Explosive, and it just does not do that. It doesn't do Flame Ward
It
at
does
all
explosive,
because the
right?
damage is. It does Explosive for the minion that is attacking,
No.
but not the others.
Yeah.
Right? It's not magic. You're not attacking as a team, so you have to select. Okay, I want this one minion to live through the Explosive, and then everything else is going to take 2. And sometimes that'll be okay, but often you have a bunch of 2 health minions. So, and then Flame Ward is just, it does the damage after the attack anyway, so it completely doesn't have any effect. Again, it does promote that sort of back and forth board tension, which I think is good, but sometimes we've seen things that promote that and they just like don't work out. So I'm curious to see how it shapes the way we're playing both of those classes, if at all.
This is a card Hat wants to be good because it means that investing in the board matters. Right? Kind of.
So, okay. From a game design perspective, absolutely. From how I want to play either of these classes, this disincentivizes me going face, so I hate it. Because if this is good, that means I have to go face less, and I don't want to go face less, I want to go face more. But
Okay, fair enough.
From a game design perspective, what I hope
may
is
have
good.
this Dwarven Sniper effect.
The what?
Oh, the Dwarven Sniper effect, where you run Dwarven
Sharpshooter.
Sniper in Face Hunter because sometimes, Dwarven Sharpshooter, because sometimes it is good for allowing you to push more damage face. But what I find is that there are a lot of times where people who are less experienced with Face Hunter have a Dwarven Sharpshooter and are compelled to use their hero power on minions when it's a distraction and they just should be going face. And I feel like that could happen here as well, where people that are less well versed in determining whether to go face or not may have gone face previously, but because they see the value of the free trades, will make those trades even if they're inappropriate.
I will say this card in Arena is probably busted. Yeah.
Yes, this card's quite good in Arena. And we had one more card we're going to talk about, but it's unconfirmed and we're already going late. So I think we should just talk about it when it is a confirmed card. And why don't we just go into the outro? Because that's a lot of card talk. And I could go on for hours and hours, but we don't need this to be a 3-hour show, even though it's already quickly approaching.
It's fine. We'll just glide to a finish here. We have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website at CoinConcede.com. You can find our content info, our show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/CoinConcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. Right into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at CoinConcede. Like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/CoinConcede. If you like some CC swag, head over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Big thanks to our producers, Number Theory, Itinerant Wizard, Tony S, DoTK, and Carhu. And big thanks to GoTricks2 for the bits during the stream. Also, huge shout out and Coin Concede from all of us for Lorinda hanging out, being a great guest, being a great human. Lorinda, thank you so much for being on the show. Who is Coin Concede ready? All right, so Coin Concede's for me. The Angry Chicken, again, was on that show this week, had a blast, great time. Garrett was on vacation, but he made a guest appearance partway through the show. Check out their Twitter if you don't know what I'm talking about. Wash in the Wind and Mixclouds, both community members that hit first time legend this week. There might be some others that I missed, but those two I remember. So congratulations to both of you. And big coin concede to Donkey, member of our community, creator of an awesome website that has added a new feature, which has been good and bad. It is a live feed of current streamer decks with deck codes and legend ranks visible in a list that is constantly updating. And I have made it into a pinned tab, and I am drowning in deck lists. I am drowning in them. I constantly have like 7 HS Deck Viewer tabs open. I don't know what they are. Where did this deck even come from? What is this? Who made this? Am I playing this? Do I have a second copy of it? It's addictive and wonderful and terrible and great and awful. So, Donkey, thank you very much for enabling me. I really appreciate it. On opening day of the stream, if my computer just runs screaming out of my house because I have 30 Chrome tabs open, please stop it and send it back. I promise I'll be nicer, maybe. So, thank you very much, Donkey. Boticus, who you got?
All right, I want to coin concede to my listener series opponent this week, Swarm Tides, who he unfortunately did not have the best draws in our games. Got a bit unlucky in how the game is played out, but it was extremely nice and very sportsmanlike. And said some really nice things about the show. So really appreciate having such a positive interaction, even though I have positive interactions with all the listeners, but especially with Swarm Tides. Thanks so much, and well played.
And for me, just last additional coin concede to Lorinda. We didn't talk about it much on the show, but he has been super supportive of women in the Hearthstone space as well. Should have brought it up earlier. It slipped my mind. He's been such a great ally throughout the past couple of years. So shout out to him once again. And shout out to the whole design team for designing a set for me, because this is on track to be my favorite set ever, I think. We didn't talk about them, but there's a certain mage shaman combination that I'm just delighted for. I love spell damage. I love trying to make it work, and there's 2 5-mana legendaries that you're gonna be able to play together, and I really want to make some really crazy stuff happen. So shout out to all of Team 5.
We'll make sure to talk about them next week.
That's clever. This is the set to build wacky decks. So until next time, keep calm and channel your inner Edelweiss. And if you see us on ladder, spellburst coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
All right, winding down the outro. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you next week.